The Nevada desert stretches endlessly, dry and silent under the scorching sun. By day and the cold stars by night. Along lonely highways, scattered bus stops wait for travelers who may never arrive. Some say time behaves strangely at these stops. Clocks stop, watches freeze, and the air feels heavy, as if reality itself hesitates. Figures appear in the distancia, sometimes fading in and out, sometimes moving impossibly fast. Some travelers claim to have vanished completely, leaving only whispers in the wind and shifting footprints in the sand. Tonight, we will explore the most haunted desert bus stops in Nevada, where time freezes, shadows linger, and the past never truly leaves. Would you dare to wait for a bus at night in a place where time may never move again? Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are feeling calm and safe tonight, because we are about to journey through the haunted bus stops of Nevada. These are not ordinary stops. They are places where the desert stretches endlessly, and the wind carries the whispers of those who came before. Some travelers report seeing figures waiting patiently, only to disappear when approached. Some hear faint whispers or footsteps echoing in the still night. Others feel time distort around them. Minutes stretch into hours, and sometimes hours vanish without explanation. The desert is vast and quiet, yet at these stops, something lingers, something unseen but ever present. Before we begin, let me ask you this: if you were waiting at a bus stop in the middle of the Nevada desert and time itself seemed to freeze, would you stay and watch, or would you run as fast as your legs could carry you? Take a deep breath, and let us step carefully into the shadows of Nevada's haunted desert bus stops. Silent Sand Stop sits isolated in the endless expanse of sun-scorched desert, a small oasis of structure in a land defined by heat and shimmer. By day, travelers see only a modest building, its paint faded, its windows clouded with dust, yet. When the heat haze rises, the inn seems to shift and breathe with an unnatural presence, drawing the curious and the weary alike. Figures appear in the distance, clothed in garments that seem stitched from the past. They stand silently beneath the wavering horizon, unmoving yet undeniably alive in the corners of the eye. Those who approach often find the figures vanish as if swallowed by the desert, leaving only heat waves and a sense of lingering attention, as though the desert itself holds memory in the shape of these spectral visitors. Leaving only heat waves and a sense of lingering attention, as though the desert itself holds memory in the shape of these spectral visitors. As though the desert itself holds memory in the shape of these spectral visitors. Time behaves strangely here. Clocks, when brought near, falter or stop entirely, their hands frozen mid-motion. Travelers recount moments when the usual rhythm of seconds and minutes dissolves, leaving a sensation that the world has paused, that every movement is observed within a quiet, suspended bubble. The stillness amplifies the presence of the figures and the subtle sounds of the inn, heightening the sense that Silent Sand Stop exists outside ordinary experience. That the world has paused, that every movement is observed within a quiet, suspended bubble. Some visitors feel invisible touches, light taps on the shoulder or brief brushes along the arm, the type of contact that confirms something unseen walks beside them. These sensations are fleeting yet tangible, enough to awaken a heightened awareness, a careful scanning of the horizon, the building, and the empty desert surrounding the inn. Each step carries the weight of uncertainty, each glance suggesting that the line between the living and the lingering past is thin and permeable. The building itself seems attentive, as if aware of those who enter and adjusts itself subtly in response. Dust drifts along the floor even when air is still, shadows pool in corners in ways that defy simple explanation. And doors may close gently after being opened without a breeze. The atmosphere is thick with expectancy, every surface, every feature hinting at stories stored in the walls. Echoing decades or perhaps centuries of transient travelers, each leaving a faint mark that time cannot erase. The desert surrounding Silent Sand Stop contributes to its uncanny character. The sand ripples underfoot with a hypnotic rhythm, heat waves distort the horizon into a wavering mirage. And the sun casts harsh light that exaggerates every shadow. Figures are often first noticed at the periphery, blending with this distorted environment, appearing almost as part of the desert itself. They shift imperceptibly with the shimmer, giving the impression that memory and presence are woven into the very air. Inside, the inn offers a quiet counterpoint to the vast, desolate expanse outside. The rooms carry the scent of aged wood and dry air, simple furniture arranged neatly yet subtly out of place when examined closely. Guests occasionally notice small Changiza chairs slightly angled, objects mavita small indications that the inn acknowledges the presence of those who dwell within it. These minor shifts are never alarming but serve to reinforce the sense that Silent Sand Stop is alive in ways unseen, attuned to every action and observation. Evenings at the inn bring a surreal stillness. The sun dips low, painting the sand in molten hues, and the figures become more pronounced, reflected briefly in windows before dissolving into heat waves. Shadows stretch long and thin across the interior, and the faintest echoes of steps or whispered words may carry through the halls. Guests report a quiet anticipation, a sense that the inn and the surrounding desert are watching, waiting to interact in ways that cannot be fully explained or predicted. Experiences at Silent Sand Stop leave an enduring impression. Travelers recount sensations of being observed, moments when the environment itself seemed responsive. Glimpses of figures that feel more like memories than actual beings. The combination of halted time, invisible touches, and the shimmering desert. A space where the ordinary and the extraordinary converge, leaving visitors aware that some things exist beyond the bounds of perception. By morning, the inn resumes its quiet facade, the desert returning to its ordinary rhythms, and the figures vanish as if they were never there. The desert returning to its ordinary rhythms, and the figures vanish as if they were never there. Yet those who have stayed know that Silent Sand Stop has left its mark. The air carries memory, the sand retains impression. And the building stands as a subtle witness to all who enter. Travelers leave with a lingering sense that they have crossed into a space where time, presence, and memory converge. A place alive with quiet mysteries that continue to unfold long after the sun rises. Silent Sand Stop is more than a resting point on a journey. It is a threshold, a living memory in the heart of the desert. A place where the unseen and the remembered coexist. Visitors depart carrying the awareness that the inn watches, listens, and interacts in ways both gentle and profound, leaving an impression that remains long after the last heat shimmer fades into the horizon. Dust Whisper Stop sits alone in the heart of a vast desert, its weathered sign swaying slightly in the hot wind. The building is small, constructed from sun-baked wood and stone. Its weathered sign swaying slightly in the hot wind. The building is small, constructed from sun-baked wood and stone. Its edges softened by years of sandstorms. Even in the heat of day, the wind carries soft whispers. They drift over dunes, curling around the edges of the building, brushing against visitors like faint echoes of a conversation long forgotten. Sometimes the voices call out names that no one knows, syllables that feel personal yet strange, leaving those who hear them with an unsettling awareness of unseen observers. The silence of the desert amplifies these subtle sounds. Footsteps across the sand seem louder. The rattling of a shutter against the side of the building becomes sharp, and the whispers stand out as clear fragments against the emptiness. Travelers often pause, listening for their source, only to find nothing, no one, and no explanation. Yet the feeling of being watched persists. Inside Dust Whisper Stop, the air is cooler, though it carries the dryness of the desert. The interior is simple, with rough-hewn counters, shelves lined with dusty jars, and a few tables and chairs scattered across the floor. Despite the apparent abandonment, subtle signs suggest recent presence. Objects may be shifted slightly, a cup left in a different position, or a chair angled differently from where it was before. These small details leave an impression that the building itself is attentive, aware, and alive with subtle motion. At night, the atmosphere becomes more pronounced. Some travelers report sudden chills in the desert heat, a temperature drop that feels localized and deliberate. The combination of wind, whispers, and shadows creates a palpable tension, a sense that the environment is shaping itself in response to those who enter. Visitors describe moments when the whispers seem to respond to their thoughts or movements. A name may be uttered as a traveler passes a doorway, a soft sigh follows as someone settles into a chair, or the wind shifts suddenly, brushing across the skin in a way that feels intentional. It is a place where perception, memory, and presence intersect. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly in every direction. The dunes rise and fall like waves frozen in time, their surfaces constantly reshaped by wind. Travelers report glimpsing fleeting figures at the horizon, blurred and indistinct, disappearing before they can be fully observed. The line between reality and illusion blurs here, where soft whispers carry over the sand and shadows move with the rhythm of the wind. Shadows move with the rhythm of the wind. Dust whispers stop has an uncanny way of slowing time. Guests often describe stepping inside and losing track of hours, caught in the interplay of wind, whisper, and shadow. It is as if the inn itself holds space for stories, for echoes of travelers long past, and for those who arrive seeking respite and encounter the inexplicable. Some report sitting quietly at the counter, feeling the faint brush of a presence as though someone unseen has taken a seat nearby. The whispers grow louder at these moments, a tapestry of murmurs and half-formed words that evoke longing, caution, and curiosity. The desert wind joins this chorus, carrying fragments of sound that rise and fall in rhythm with the dunes themselves. The effect on visitors is both unsettling and mesmerizing. Every gust of wind, every subtle change in shadow or light, seems imbued with intent. Some leave dust whispers stop feeling that they have been part of a conversation they cannot fully recall. That they have witnessed patterns and forms invisible to the ordinary eye. Others carry a lingering chill, a reminder that the desert is not empty. And that the whispers are never truly gone. The legend of dust whisper stop grows quietly among travelers who dare to seek it. Stories of faint voices, sudden chills, and fleeting shapes are shared in hushed tones around campfires and at distant inns. Those who find it know that it is a place where the desert breathes with memory, where every sound and shadow hints at lives, thoughts, and events just beyond immediate perception. Even in the morning sun, subtle traces remain. Footsteps in the sand may shift when no one is nearby. Shadows linger slightly longer than they should. And the faintest whisper rides the breeze, teasing the edges of hearing. Teasing the edges of hearing. Dust whisper stop exists in a liminal space, where wind, sand, and structure combine to create a narrative that is ongoing, quiet, and elusive. Dust whisper stop exists in a liminal space, where wind, sand, and structure combine. Visitors depart with impressions that remain long after leaving. The memory of soft whispers carried by the desert wind. Sudden chills in the heat. And shadowy figures glimpsed at the horizon. Dust whisper stop is a place that inhabits the mind. A story that continues in memory. A whisper that persists in the empty spaces of travel. And a reminder that even the vast, sun-baked desert holds secrets waiting for those willing to notice. Mirage Point bus stop sits alone on a stretch of desert road. By day, it seems almost ordinary, a small shelter with a weathered bench and a faded sign marking the stop. Yet travelers quickly learn that this place exists by its own rules, a location where reality bends and time seems uncertain. Figures appear and vanish in the distance, like mirages born from heat waves. Some are travelers waiting patiently, their forms blurred and incomplete. Others move along the roadside, then vanish as if swallowed by the desert itself. Their presence is fleeting, yet unmistakable, leaving a sense of wonder and unease for anyone who witnesses it. The mirages are never threatening, only elusive, teasing perception and memory. The bus is another enigma. Travelers sometimes wait for hours, expecting the familiar rumble of an engine, or the arrival of lights along the asphalt. Yet nothing comes. Footsteps echo across the sand. Yet no one is seen. The wind carries faint sounds that resemble conversations or laughter. Fragments of distant lives, only to vanish with the next gust. Each moment stretches time, leaving observers uncertain if they have waited minutes or hours. Shadows at Mirage Point behave strangely. They linger longer than they should, stretching unnaturally across the desert floor. Some appear independent of any visible figure, moving with a rhythm all their own. Others merge with the heat waves, dissolving and reforming in shapes that suggest movement without form. The interaction of light, sand, and perception creates an ever-shifting landscape, where reality feels fluid, and what is seen cannot always be trusted. The architecture of the bus stop itself adds to the mystery. Its roof and supports cast angular shadows in the sun, which stretch across the sand and merge with those of invisible travelers. Every detail, from the texture of the paint to the faint creaking of wooden planks, contributes to an environment that feels alive with stories just beyond reach. Visitors often notice subtle signs of movement. Sand shifts as though footsteps have passed moments before. Small objects, a bottle or a bag, may appear where none were left. There is a rhythm to these occurrences, a gentle insistence that the desert is not empty, that life has been present even when unseen. The mirages, shadows, and shifting sands work together to create an atmosphere both beautiful and disorienting, compelling attention and reflection. The desert itself is part of the enigma. Heat waves distort vision, creating patterns that trick the eye and make distances difficult to judge. Sunlight reflects off grains of sand, forming illusions of shapes and movement. The combination of environment and perception makes every visit to Mirage Point unique, a space where observation is an active, almost participatory experience. Travelers feel that they are part of the landscape, caught between what is real and what is imagined. Nightfall changes the dynamics entirely. Shadows lengthen, merging with the darkness of the desert beyond. Stars reflect on the sand, and the bus stop takes on a quiet, almost sacred presence. Mirages are less defined but more compelling, hinting at forms that defy explanation. The wind carries whispers that may be the echoes of travelers long gone or fragments of memory embedded in the desert itself. Footsteps still echo, as if time has left its mark on the sand, preserved in a moment that repeats endlessly. Despite the uncertainty, Mirage Point is not threatening. It is a place of observation, reflection, and quiet curiosity. The desert, the bus stop, and the shifting forms invite contemplation, offering a glimpse into the ways perception can be influenced by environment, memory, and expectation. Visitors learn to move slowly, to notice the smallest details, and to consider that what they see may be part of a larger story written into the desert itself. By dawn, the desert returns to stillness. Mirages fade with the morning light. Shadows shrink to normal proportions, and the wind smooths the sand. Yet the impressions of the previous hours linger in the mind of anyone who has watched closely. Travelers leave with a sense of having witnessed a place where reality and imagination intersect, where time and perception are fluid, and where the desert itself seems to hold secrets just beyond reach. Mirage Point bus stop endures as a space between worlds. Every shimmer of heat, every lingering shadow, and every echo of footsteps reminds visitors that this is not merely a stop along the road, but a crossroads of memory, perception, and mystery. Those who pause, watch, and listen discover a place that exists at the edge of reality. A location where the desert preserves the stories of travelers, seen and unseen, in forms that are as fleeting as they are unforgettable. Forgotten Highway Stop sits quietly on a desolate stretch of road, where cracked asphalt meets encroaching weeds and the horizon blurs into the haze of heat or mist. The building, once a bustling refuge for travelers, now stands weathered and silent, its paint faded and windows streaked with the passage of time. Even in still air, the faint rustle of movement drifts from inside, as if the walls remember the footsteps and conversations of those who once passed through. Inside, old newspaper pages scatter across the floor, yet no breeze stirs them. Headlines from decades past tell of forgotten events, yet the words seem alive, lingering in the atmosphere with a weight that is difficult to describe. Travelers often pause to pick up a page, only to feel it slip from their fingers as if the story itself resists being held. The waiting area contains worn chairs, lined in a row along the cracked linoleum. Some travelers report seeing passengers seated in these chairs, dressed in clothing from eras long gone. They sit quietly, staring straight ahead, seemingly aware of the present yet disconnected from it. The figures do not move when observed closely, and when attention shifts, they fade like mist, leaving only the faint outline of presence behind. Time behaves unpredictably within the forgotten highway stop. Minutes stretch endlessly, and brief glances toward the clock can feel like hours have passed. This temporal distortion adds to the feeling that the building is alive, that it measures its own rhythm and observes those who linger within. Sounds are subtle but constant. The faint squeak of a door hinge, the soft scrape of a chair against the floor, and the distant hum of an engine that never approaches all create an environment that is both familiar and uncanny. Even silence carries meaning, weighted with the echoes of decades of travelers and the stories they left behind. Each sound is amplified by the building's aged architecture, reminding visitors that every step, every breath, is shared with the memory of the past. Windows frame the surrounding highway and distant landscape, reflecting the world outside while also offering glimpses of movement within. Shadows stretch across walls and floors, often forming shapes that seem to respond to presence. Visitors sometimes feel as though they are being guided, gently nudged along corridors that twist in subtle, unnatural ways. The building appears to fold space in quiet moments, creating pathways that loop back upon themselves, further heightening the sense of timelessness. At night, the stop takes on a particularly spectral quality. Dim lights flicker along the interior, casting pools of glow that illuminate the chairs and tables, but leave corners in darkness. Reflections in dusty windows hint at movement beyond the visible, fleeting forms that disappear when approached. The air grows colder, carrying the scent of old leather, paper, and faint hints of engine oil. A reminder of countless journeys begun and ended at this place. Guests often speak of whispers, soft and unintelligible, that seem to emerge from the walls themselves. The voices do not call or warn, but murmur gently, as if narrating stories that are no longer their own. Sometimes the whispers repeat words in a loop, phrases that cannot be deciphered but are impossible to ignore. The effect is hypnotic, drawing attention to the quiet rhythm of the building, the endless waiting of its unseen occupants, and the fragile boundary between past and present. The outside environment mirrors the eerie stillness. The highway stretches endlessly in both directions, empty of vehicles or human activity. Fog sometimes drifts across the asphalt, softening the edges of distant streetlights and telephone poles. Travelers notice that the horizon seems to curve, that familiar landmarks appear closer or further away than they should. The landscape is mutable, reflecting the same timeless, shifting quality that permeates the interior of the stop. Despite its isolation and mysterious occurrences, the forgotten highway stop does not feel threatening. There is no sense of danger, only an overwhelming awareness of being observed and recorded by time itself. Every creak, shadow, and whispered word contributes to an immersive experience that is subtle, lingering, and impossible to ignore. Visitors find themselves caught in a space that is both safe and profoundly strange, a place where perception and memory intertwine. By morning, the atmosphere shifts. The scattered newspapers settle, shadows shrink with the rising sun, and the whispers fade into silence. The seated passengers vanish completely, leaving only empty chairs behind. Yet the impressions remain, etched in the minds of those who have passed through. Travelers leave carrying the awareness that they have glimpsed something beyond ordinary perception, a place where time, memory, and presence converge in quiet harmony. Forgotten Highway Stop endures as a witness to countless journeys. A place where past travelers linger. And time bends around its walls. The scattered papers, echoing footsteps, and fleeting figures are part of a living memory that continues to shape the experience of every visitor. Those who pass through do not simply traverse a building. They enter a space that exists simultaneously in the past and present, where the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary, and every moment feels suspended between reality and something just beyond. Every visit to the stop becomes a subtle journey into reflection, observation, and awareness. The highway outside remains empty, yet the stories inside continue to unfold. The building invites attention to every detail, every sound, and every shadow. It leaves an imprint that lingers long after travelers continue on their journey, a reminder that some places exist beyond conventional understanding, where waiting is eternal and memories are alive. Dead Horizon Stop sits isolated on a stretch of desert where the sun burns relentlessly and the land seems to ripple with a life of its own. From a distance, the horizon appears endless, stretching farther than it should, bending and warping the perception of anyone who dares to approach. The air shimmers with heat, creating illusions that confuse the eye, and travelers often feel as if the world itself is subtly altered around them. Figures appear at the edges of vision, men and women dressed in hats and clothing from decades past. They stand motionless, watching silently from the heat haze. Their forms hazy and insubstantial. When approached, they vanish without a trace, leaving only the impression that the desert holds memories, frozen in time and ready to reveal themselves to those who are observant enough. These figures are never threatening, yet their presence is unsettling, a reminder that this place exists outside the normal flow of reality. Time itself seems to behave strangely near Dead Horizon Stop. Clocks falter, watches lose rhythm, and the usual cadence of minutes and hours becomes unreliable. Travelers speak of moments when the desert feels suspended, when every step is measured in an uncertain tempo, and every sound is amplified by the stillness. The effect is disorienting, as though the desert is not only a physical space, but a temporal one, holding fragments of the past, and blending them seamlessly with the present. Some visitors report hearing whispers carried on the wind. The voices are faint but distinct, a mixture of warning and attention, as if the desert itself is speaking, coaxing travelers to observe, to notice the subtle shifts in the environment. And those who pause to listen often feel an uncanny sense of being guided, or perhaps admonished, by something unseen. The terrain around Dead Horizon Stop adds to the unsettling experience. Dunes roll endlessly in every direction, their edges sharp and exaggerated by sunlight. Shadows stretch and twist in impossible ways, creating illusions of movement where there is none. Rocks and sand appear to shift subtly under observation, reinforcing the idea that this desert is alive, attentive, and capable of reshaping itself around those who traverse it. Every glance toward the horizon becomes a test of perception, every movement a negotiation with the uncanny landscape. The stop itself is a modest structure, unassuming in appearance but layered with subtle strangeness. Windows reflect forms that are never fully present, doors creak without wind, and the air inside carries a persistent stillness that contrasts with the heat and motion of the desert outside. Guests have noted the sensation of being observed, small indications that the building is aware, responsive to presence, and intimately connected to the anomalous energy of the surrounding land. Figures and whispers combine to create an immersive experience that defies ordinary explanation. Travelers often feel a magnetic pull toward the horizon, compelled to look, to move, to witness. Yet each step brings a mixture of curiosity and caution, an understanding that this place is not governed by the rules of the everyday world. The horizon is both alluring and disorienting, a living canvas for the memories, figures, and temporal anomalies that define Dead Horizon Stop. Evenings bring a heightened sense of the uncanny. The sun dips low, casting long, wavering shadows that seem to reach across the dunes and touch the building itself. The figures become more defined in the twilight, and the whispers intensify, carried along with the faint wind that brushes across the sand. It is during these hours that visitors often feel the presence most acutely, aware that they are within a space where memory, perception, and environment merge to create an experience that is at once subtle and profound. By nightfall, the desert resumes its silent rhythm, though the influence of Dead Horizon Stop lingers. The horizon remains distorted, the echoes of figures and whispers persist in memory. And travelers depart with an awareness that the stop exists in a liminal space. It is a place where reality bends, where past and present intersect. And where the desert itself seems alive with observation and intent. Dead Horizon Stop is more than a resting point or waypoint on a journey. It is a threshold. A place where the land remembers. Where figures from another time linger. And where the whispers of the desert reach out. To those who pass through. Visitors leave carrying the impression of a space alive with subtle mysteries. Aware that the horizon stretches far beyond the visible. Holding stories, presences, and warnings that continue to resonate long after the sun has set. Coyote Crossing Stop sits isolated along a desert highway. A place where the horizon stretches endlessly and the sky glows faintly with the last light of sunset. The building itself is weathered, its paint faded by years of sun and sand. And its windows reflect the vast emptiness surrounding it. Travelers often feel an immediate shift upon approaching, a sense that the desert has paused, watching, waiting, and whispering. Whispering. As night falls, the desert comes alive in subtle, unsettling ways. Glowing eyes appear among the dunes and rocky outcrops, lingering in the darkness, yet no animals can be seen, no movements betray their presence. The eyes seem deliberate, observing, almost intelligent in their stillness. Yet no animals can be seen, no movements betray their presence. Those who stop here report a mix of curiosity and unease, a sensation that the desert itself is alive with unseen attention. A sense of dread settles over the desert, as if the very presence of these unseen eyes has awakened something ancient and malevolent. Soft whispers drift through the dry air, carried on faint desert winds. They call out to travelers, urging them to move on, to leave before the night deepens. They are faint and fragmented, often repeating names or phrases that make no immediate sense. Some describe them as warnings, subtle yet pressing, as if the desert itself is protective of what lies within its bounds. The architecture of Coyote Crossing Stop adds to the atmosphere. The small building includes a waiting area, a counter with a few chairs, and a single bathroom. Inside, The lighting is dim, shadows stretching across corners in ways that seem unnatural. The silence inside is almost complete, broken only by the occasional creak of the floor or the whispering wind seeping through cracks in the walls. Travelers describe strange experiences with vehicles at the stop. On several occasions, buses are reported to arrive along the highway, doors open, headlights glowing, yet no driver is present. The buses linger for moments, idling silently, then vanish into the desert as quickly as they appeared. Some who have witnessed this phenomenon feel a strong pull to board, though they describe an almost instinctive fear that deters them. Others observe from a distance, captivated by the impossible sight of a vehicle operating without human control. The desert around Coyote Crossing stop seems to shift subtly, as if it resists the intrusion of human presence. Footprints in the sand may disappear shortly after being made. And dunes seem to realign overnight. The combination of glowing eyes, whispered voices, and mysterious vehicles creates a sense that the area operates under rules separate from the ordinary world. A place where natural law is suspended just enough to unsettle those who venture too far. Shadows move along the edges of vision, ephemeral and indistinct. A traveler may glimpse a figure near the dunes or see a silhouette by the building that vanishes upon direct observation. Even in the brightest light of day, these subtle movements linger in memory, creating a sense of uncertainty and heightening awareness of every sound, breeze, and shift in the sand. The stop has a history, pieced together from the accounts of those who have passed through. Whispers tell of travelers who arrived and never departed. Of figures glimpsed at the edge of vision that followed visitors along the highway. And of buses that appeared on no schedule, leaving behind only the faint imprint of tires on sand and gravel. These stories persist, shared quietly by those who have returned to tell of the strange and the unexplained. The environment at Coyote Crossing stop encourages vigilance. Every gust of wind, every subtle flicker of light, seems amplified. The desert itself feels aware, the earth and sand subtly responding to the presence of travelers. Those who linger report a heightened sense of perception, noticing details that might otherwise go unnoticed: the movement of distant shadows, the shift of clouds over dunes, the way the whispering seems to move in response to their steps. Despite its unsettling qualities, the stop draws travelers seeking the extraordinary. Some arrive out of curiosity, others by accident. Yet all are affected by the phenomena that unfold. The glowing eyes, the ghostly whispers, and the driverless buses create an experience that lingers, embedding itself into memory and imagination. It is a place where the boundary between reality and something beyond becomes thin. A threshold that tests perception and invites contemplation. The night at Coyote Crossing stop carries a quiet intensity. Stars fill the sky in brilliant constellations, yet the darkness beneath them is deep, almost tactile. Travelers hear distant sounds, whispers that ebb and flow like the desert wind, and glimpses of figures that exist on the periphery of vision. The interplay of light, shadow, and sound is hypnotic, immersive, and inescapable. Those who leave the stop often carry its presence with them. A lingering awareness of the desert's quiet sentience. Memories of glowing eyes, whispered names, and empty buses remain vivid, haunting yet compelling. Coyote Crossing stop is more than a waypoint. It is a place where the desert speaks. Where perception and reality intertwine. And where travelers are reminded that some places exist beyond ordinary understanding, waiting quietly for those who pass through its threshold. Shifting Dunes stop lies isolated on a vast stretch of desert where the horizon blurs under the relentless sun. By day, it appears unremarkable, a simple bus shelter with peeling paint and a weathered bench, surrounded by rolling sand dunes. Yet those who linger here soon realize that the dunes themselves behave in ways that defy expectation, moving and shifting as though alive, responding to some unseen force. Sand drifts around the shelter in unusual patterns. Small mounds rise and fall without wind. And depressions appear where no footprints were left. Travelers often notice subtle movements beneath their feet. A shifting texture that makes the desert feel less like a landscape and more like a living entity, creating a tension that is both unsettling and captivating. Visitors frequently describe a sudden weight on their shoulders, as though someone invisible is sitting beside them. It is never violent or forceful, only present, an awareness of another presence that cannot be seen. An awareness of another presence that cannot be seen. The feeling comes and goes, coinciding with a breeze or a shift in the sand, leaving the mind questioning whether it is imagination or reality. Coinciding with a breeze or a shift in the sand, leaving the mind questioning whether it is imagination or reality. Those who pause and observe the sensation often feel an odd sense of connection, as if the desert itself is aware of their presence. Often feel an odd sense of connection, as if the desert itself is aware of their presence. The desert itself is aware of their presence. Footsteps appear in the sand, distinct and deliberate, only to vanish moments later. They cross paths, circle the shelter, or lead toward the dunes, but when followed, they dissolve into smooth, undisturbed sand. This recurring phenomenon reinforces the sense that the area is shaped by forces unseen, a space where traces of movement exist only briefly, hinting at stories that are incomplete yet compelling. The shelter's architecture amplifies the mysteries of the dunes. Its wooden beams creak under their own weight, casting shifting shadows on the sand. The bench bears marks that seem to form and fade with the movement of the wind, suggesting impressions left by travelers who may never have existed. Every detail, from the texture of the boards to the angle of the sunlight, interacts with the desert to create a living scene that is at once familiar and disorienting. As the day progresses, the desert seems to breathe. Heat waves rise from the dunes, distorting vision and stretching shadows into impossible forms. Figures seem to emerge from these movements, vague shapes that vanish when approached. They are neither threatening nor fully visible, only fleeting glimpses that draw attention and spark wonder. Night brings a new dimension to shifting dunes stop. Moonlight casts long, silver shadows across the dunes, making every rise and fall of sand more pronounced. Footsteps echo more distinctly in the quiet, yet no one is seen. The air grows cooler, carrying faint sounds of the desert at night, subtle and almost imperceptible, yet layered with the impression of life and motion beyond the eye's reach. The invisible presence on the bench becomes more tangible, felt in brief, sudden shifts that suggest proximity. The air grows cooler, carrying faint sounds of the desert at night, subtle and almost imperceptible, yet layered with the impression of life and motion beyond the eye's reach. Travelers often notice that the dunes interact with perception. Shapes seem larger or closer than they are. And the horizon appears to stretch or bend. Sand itself seems to record memory, preserving the echo of footsteps, shifting mounds, and the weight of unseen companions. Observation requires patience, a quiet attentiveness to the environment, and a willingness to accept that the desert operates under rules different from those known elsewhere. Despite its eerie qualities, shifting dunes stop is not hostile. The forces at play are subtle and deliberate, encouraging mindfulness rather than fear. Travelers learn to observe small details, to notice patterns in the sand, and to sense presence without sight. The dunes, shadows, and footprints together create a dialogue between observer and environment, an invitation to reflect on the passage of time, memory, and the interaction of perception and reality. By dawn, the desert returns to a calm, almost ordinary state. The sand smooths itself under the early light, footprints vanish. And the invisible weight on the bench dissipates. Yet the memory of the night lingers, leaving visitors with the sense of having shared a moment with the desert that is beyond ordinary understanding. They depart with impressions of shifting sands, Silent footsteps and the subtle presence of unseen companions. Aware that the desert has told its story in ways both mysterious and unforgettable. Shifting dunes stop endures as a space where the ordinary and the extraordinary meet. Every grain of sand, every echo of movement, and every fleeting shadow reminds travelers that this place exists on the edge of perception. It is a stop where reality bends, where the unseen leaves traces, and where those who pause and watch discover a desert alive with memory, presence, and the quiet mysteries that have endured for generations. Echo Ridge Stop perches atop a lonely stretch of highway, surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests that swallow the horizon. The building itself is unremarkable at first glance, a modest structure of weathered wood and cracked windows. Yet it carries an atmosphere that immediately unsettles those who approach. Sounds are sharper, the air heavier, and the faint hum of the ridge itself seems almost alive. Inside, every movement is magnified. The soft scrape of a shoe against the worn floorboards echoes through empty hallways. And the clang of a bell above the door reverberates long after the last visitor has entered. It is as if the stop amplifies perception, forcing attention to every detail. Travelers often find themselves pausing mid-step, unnerved by the clarity of each sound. Feeling as though the building is listening and responding to their presence. Footsteps are not always their own. Guests report hearing a rhythm that matches their movement yet originates from behind, always following. The sound does not approach or retreat, but persists, constant and unnerving. Some turn quickly, expecting to see another person, only to find the hallways empty. The sensation lingers, a quiet pressure at the edges of awareness that cannot be dismissed. Clocks behave strangely within the stop. Visitors have noted that time seems to falter, with minutes stretching or vanishing entirely. Some clocks stop altogether, hands frozen for what feels like hours, only to resume abruptly. Travelers glance at their watches, only to find the numbers conflicting with their own perception, reinforcing the unsettling impression that time bends within these walls. The waiting area is lined with old wooden chairs, their surfaces worn smooth by countless visitors. Shadows gather in corners, shifting subtly with the changing light. The windows frame the surrounding hills and forests, yet the landscape sometimes appears altered, as if the ridge itself reshapes the view. Faint mists roll in from the valleys below, curling along the edges of the building and softening the line between solid ground and air. Travelers feel both grounded and suspended, aware of the world outside while sensing something beyond it. At night, Echo Ridge Stop transforms. Dim lights flicker, casting long, wavering shadows across walls and floors. The amplified sounds grow more pronounced, from distant creaks to faint whispers that seem just out of understanding. Travelers often describe a feeling of presence, of unseen companions moving quietly among them. These figures are not threatening, yet they are impossible to ignore. The air carries the scent of aged wood, faint smoke, and earth. Anchoring the experience in the physical while hinting at the extraordinary. The corridors twist subtly, making familiar paths feel unfamiliar. Doors appear slightly misaligned from one visit to the next. And hallways that once seemed straight can curve imperceptibly. This spatial ambiguity, combined with distorted time and heightened sounds, creates a sense of vertigo. Travelers move cautiously, aware that each step may alter their perception. That the building itself is a puzzle shaped by memory, expectation, and unseen forces. Windows reveal the surrounding ridge in strange ways at night. Shadows stretch across the hills. And mists pool in valleys like liquid silver. Occasionally, the reflection of a figure can be seen, standing in the glass as though outside yet impossibly near. When approached, the figure vanishes, leaving only the echo of movement in its place. This interplay between reflection and reality contributes to the lodge's unique tension, keeping guests alert and immersed in the environment. Even the smallest objects seem alive with suggestion. A cup left on a counter may appear shifted when returned. A chair slightly askew, or a door left ajar as if inviting observation. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. The environment teaches a new kind of attentiveness, where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. The environment teaches a new kind of attentiveness. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Where the ordinary is never entirely predictable. Subtle changes like these are rarely alarming, yet they heighten awareness. Forcing travelers to pay attention to the mundane and the uncanny alike. To the mundane and the uncanny alike. Outside, the ridge amplifies the wind, the distant rumble of vehicles, and the quiet hum of insects. The natural world mirrors the Logia's internal distortions, creating a seamless blend between interior and exterior. Visitors often step outside to regain a sense of normalcy, only to find the amplified world continues beyond the building's walls. Sounds carry in strange directions, shadows stretch unnaturally, and time feels suspended along the empty stretches of road. By morning, the amplified world recedes. Footsteps lose their echo. Clocks resume their steady rhythm. And shadows settle into familiar shapes. The ridge seems ordinary once more. And travelers depart with the impression of having experienced something beyond typical perception. The memory lingers, an awareness of heightened sound, altered time, and subtle presence that continues to shape their thoughts long after leaving. Echo Ridge Stop endures as a place where perception, time, and space converge. It magnifies the ordinary, revealing the extraordinary hidden in sound, shadow, and stillness. Every visitor carries the memory of amplified footsteps, paused clocks, and the quiet pressure of being observed. The lodge is not merely a building, but a living record of experience, a threshold where ordinary reality intersects with subtle, unexplainable phenomena. For those who pause and observe, Echo Ridge Stop offers an immersive encounter with presence, perception, and time itself. It is a place that lingers in memory, where each sound and shadow becomes part of a story, and where the extraordinary quietly unfolds within the ordinary. Moonlit Pass Stop rests at the crest of a desert ridge where the moon hangs low and unnaturally large in the sky. Its silvery glow bathes the sands, casting long, shifting shadows that seem to stretch and twist on their own, independent of the objects that should create them. Travelers who arrive here often pause, feeling the weight of the night pressing down, aware that this place is unlike any other along the desert roads. The sand itself seems alive under the moonlight. Footprints appear where none were made, and gusts of wind shift the dunes in patterns that almost suggest intention. There is a rhythm here that is subtle and uncanny, a pulse beneath the desert stillness that hints at unseen presences observing every movement. The air carries a faint chill, though the desert remains warm, and every step feels both grounded and tenuous at the same time. Visitors describe a sensation of being watched, as though countless invisible eyes trace their movements across the pass. The feeling is not aggressive, but it is insistent, a persistent awareness that the space itself is conscious, attentive. Even experienced travelers feel unease here, a prickling at the edges of perception, as if the moonlight amplifies the desert's own quiet consciousness. The stop itself is modest, a weathered structure of stone and timber that has withstood decades of heat, wind, and shifting sands. At a distance, it appears ordinary, a waypoint for those seeking shelter, but the closer one approaches, the more apparent its unusual nature becomes. Shadows flicker along the walls without any source of light, and the air within the building seems heavier, imbued with the hushed presence of the desert outside. At night, the moon dominates the sky, its size and clarity amplifying the surreal atmosphere. Shadows stretch across the sand, bending around rocks and dunes, moving as if with purpose. Travelers have reported seeing figures at the periphery of their vision, indistinct but undeniably there. They vanish when looked at directly, leaving only the impression of being guided or observed by something that exists between the worlds of reality and memory. Sounds behave strangely at Moonlit Pass Stop. The wind carries faint echoes of movement that have no origin. Footsteps seem to follow visitors even when the sands around them remain undisturbed. A distant rustle in the dunes might be nothing more than shifting sand, yet the effect is disorienting. Travelers find themselves listening intently, yet hearing things that cannot be located. This heightens the sense that the pass is alive in ways beyond ordinary comprehension. Those who linger report subtle alterations in perception. Time seems to dilate and contract, minutes stretching into long moments of quiet tension, then snapping back unexpectedly. The horizon appears to curve unnaturally, giving the impression that the desert itself has boundaries different from the world beyond. The moonlight casts long shadows that seem to reach toward travelers, yet never touch them, a silent reminder that this space is both welcoming and alien. Stories persist of visitors who have felt guided by unseen hands, a nudge along the path or a gentle shift in direction. Others speak of hearing whispered names, soft and indistinct, carried on the wind or resonating from the desert itself. The phenomena are subtle but unmistakable, experienced by those who are present and attuned, creating a sense that Moonlit Pass Stop is not merely a location, but a threshold between the known and the mysterious. Even in the quietest hours, the presence of the moon transforms the landscape. Rocks and dunes cast shifting silhouettes, creating forms that are impossible to categorize. Travelers report glimpsing shapes that resemble figures moving through the sand, vanishing when approached. The combination of light, shadow, and perception crafts a scene that feels cinematic and alive, compelling attention and inspiring both awe and caution. By dawn, the moon retreats, leaving the pass bathed in the soft glow of early light. Shadows shorten, and the sand returns to its ordinary stillness. Yet the impressions of the night linger. Travelers leave with a sense of having walked through a place touched by something beyond the ordinary. A location where the desert and the moon conspire to create an experience both unforgettable and intangible. Moonlit Pass Stop endures as a destination unlike any other. Its combination of desert isolation, spectral light, and subtle phenomena creates a space that defies explanation yet demands observation. The sensation of being watched, of shadows twisting with intention, and of the desert whispering its secrets remains with all who pass through. It is a place where the ordinary bends into the extraordinary, leaving visitors changed, alert to the mysteries that inhabit the world just beyond perception. The desert continues its eternal rhythm, dunes shifting with the wind and the horizon stretching wide under the moon. The night lingers differently, imprinted with the subtle presence of unseen observers and the haunting beauty of shadows that move and twist beneath the moon's gaze. Travelers depart with the memory of eyes that watched, of whispers carried on the breeze, and of a landscape where the familiar becomes mysterious, and the night feels alive with quiet intention. Phantom Crossroad Stop sits isolated at the junction of two long, empty desert highways. The asphalt stretches endlessly in both directions, fading into heat waves that shimmer like mirages. Travelers who stumble upon it often describe a sudden change in the air, a sensation that the desert itself has paused, watching, waiting, and holding its breath. As twilight descends, a stillness settles over the crossroads. The wind slows and carries a strange weight, thickening the air so that each breath feels heavier. Shadows lengthen unnaturally across the sand, and the temperature seems to shift without explanation, one moment cool, the next stifling. Time feels suspended, distorted, as though the world around the stop has paused while the rest of reality continues elsewhere. It is here that buses appear, seemingly from nowhere. Seemingly from nowhere. They materialize along the deserted roads, headlights cutting through the desert dusk. Headlights cutting through the desert dusk. Doors slide open without sound. And the vehicles remain perfectly still, empty of drivers and passengers. Travelers report an inexplicable pull toward these buses. An inexplicable pull toward these buses, an urge to approach despite an underlying, instinctive caution. Those who do look inside see nothing, only dark seats, polished floors, and an air of uncanny stillness. The whispers begin almost imperceptibly. They rise from the desert floor, soft at first, brushing against the ears like a faint breeze carrying voices from distant memories. Names, half-formed phrases, and fragmented sentences drift along the asphalt and sand. Travelers often feel the whispers move in response to their steps, intensifying when they linger and fading when they move on. The voices are never threatening, yet they carry a weight of urgency, as though warning visitors of dangers unseen. Inside the stop, the atmosphere is no less strange. The waiting area is minimal, with a counter, a few chairs, and shelves lined with jars that seem untouched yet subtly rearranged over time. The Light from the setting sun filters through dusty windows, casting long, wavering patterns on the floor. Shadows pool in corners, sometimes stretching and shifting as if aware of the presence of those who have entered. Objects may be slightly displaced from their positions, a chair angled differently, a cup moved from one shelf to another, creating an unsettling sense that the building itself is observing. Travelers often describe a sensation of being followed by something unseen. Every gust of wind, every creak of the floor, carries weight. As though the desert and the stop are aware of their attention. The buses, the whispers, and the thickened air seem to form a network of subtle cues. A silent narrative that only those present can experience. Each movement, each sound, each flicker of light contributes to the overarching impression. That this place is alive, that it exists with a consciousness separate from human understanding. The desert beyond the crossroads is vast and unbroken, yet travelers often glimpse shadows at the edge of vision. These figures are fleeting, indistinct, always gone when looked at directly. They appear to watch, perhaps even guide, yet their intentions remain elusive. Combined with the drifting whispers, the presence of phantom vehicles, and the strange stillness of the air, the crossroads creates an environment that is simultaneously mesmerizing and unnerving. Some who stop here report time behaving strangely. Hours may feel like minutes, minutes stretch into hours, and the sequence of events can seem nonlinear. A traveler may recall standing at the edge of the building, then suddenly find themselves farther along the desert road, unsure of how they arrived there. It is as though the stop itself manipulates perception, bending the flow of time to match the rhythm of its own mysterious logic. At night, the experience intensifies. The whispering voices grow more distinct, carrying fragments of long-forgotten conversations, warnings, and cryptic messages. The buses appear more frequently, their presence both mesmerizing and disconcerting. Some travelers report seeing reflections of figures inside the windows of the vehicles, but when approached, the seats are always empty, the reflections gone. The legend of Phantom Crossroad Stop is carried by those who pass through. Stories shared in hushed tones at distant diners and gas stations. The accounts vary, but recurring themes emerge. The thickening air, the distorted sense of time. The whispering voices, and the phantom buses that arrive without drivers. Those who have lingered too long often describe leaving with a sense that something was partially revealed. A fragment of a reality existing just beyond ordinary perception. Even during the day, subtle traces remain. Footprints in the sand may disappear overnight. Shadows linger slightly longer than they should. And the faintest whisper rides the wind, reminding travelers that the crossroads is never truly empty. It exists in a liminal space, a threshold where perception, memory, and the desert converge into a singular experience that is as haunting as it is captivating. Visitors depart with memories that endure long after leaving. The glowing headlights of empty buses. The soft urgent whispers from the desert floor. The thick strange air remains vivid. Phantom Crossroad Stop is more than a waypoint on a journey. Where the ordinary and the extraordinary meet. Where reality bends quietly. And where the desert tells its own stories to those who pause long enough to listen. Phantom Crossroad Stop is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary meet. It is a place where the desert tells its own stories to those who pause long enough to listen. Phantom Crossroad Stop is more than a waypoint on a journey. It is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary meet. Where reality bends quietly. And where the desert tells its own stories to those who pause long enough to listen. Dust Devil Stop sits isolated on an endless stretch of desert. Where the wind carries both heat and a subtle sense of anticipation. The shelter is small and weathered, a simple structure of metal and wood. Yet it exudes an energy that draws the attention of travelers even from a distance. Here, the desert feels alive, a place where the air itself seems charged with invisible motion. Suddenly, small dust storms can form around the shelter without warning. The sand rises in twisting columns, spinning in place. Shaped by forces unseen. They appear harmless at first. Delicate spirals that shimmer in the sunlight. Yet as they grow, there is a sense that the storm is aware of those nearby. Figures emerge inside the swirling sand. Faint and blurred, moving with the wind as if carried by it. They are not solid, yet their presence is undeniable. Shaping the dust into fleeting, almost human forms. Travelers often describe a sensation of being drawn into the desert itself. Standing near the shelter, they feel a subtle tug at their balance. A weight on their feet that pulls gently but persistently toward the dunes. It is not forceful or threatening, only persistent enough to create unease. The wind carries whispers, sounds that resemble conversations or cries. But fade as quickly as they appear. Every movement of the dust seems purposeful. Guiding perception and attention. A delicate dance between observer and desert. The shelter itself seems to react to the storms. Its supports creak and shift as though bending to the wind. And the metal surfaces glint and shimmer with each gust. Reflecting the sunlight in fragmented patterns that make it difficult to focus on a single point. Shadows twist across the sand, merging with the spiraling dust. To create the impression of life and movement that is almost tangible. Figures within the dust are often described as momentary silhouettes, appearing at the edge of vision and vanishing when looked at directly. They take forms reminiscent of travelers or animals, yet always distorted, flickering between shapes. These apparitions move with a fluid grace, sometimes crossing the path of visitors, only to disappear before contact. Their presence reinforces the sense that Dust Devil Stop is a liminal space, a threshold between the ordinary world and something more elusive. Nightfall transforms the desert further. The dust storms glow faintly under the light of the moon, their edges illuminated as if filled with phosphorescent energy. Shadows stretch longer than expected, moving independently from any visible source. Travelers report hearing footsteps or whispers behind them, even when no one is near. The tug toward the dunes intensifies subtly, felt in the soles of the feet and in the weight of the air. Every sound, shadow, and flicker of movement contributes to a heightened awareness of the environment, where every detail is amplified in the quiet of the night. The desert shapes perception at Dust Devil Stop. Sand itself seems to remember movement, forming ridges and patterns that suggest traces of those who passed before. Footprints appear in the dust, only to vanish with the next small whirlwind. The interaction of wind, sand, and perception creates an experience that is both immersive and disorienting. Travelers learn to move slowly, to observe rather than react. And to accept that the desert follows its own logic. One that is not bound by conventional understanding. Despite the unsettling sensations, the stop is not malevolent. The dust storms, figures, and whispers create a space for reflection and awareness. Travelers find themselves attuned to small details, the angle of sunlight on sand grains, the shifting rhythm of the wind, the ephemeral forms within the dust. Each element contributes to a sense of mystery, encouraging a deep observation of the environment and of the subtle interaction between presence and absence, motion and stillness. By dawn, the dust settles and the desert returns to apparent calm. The swirling columns collapse, figures vanish. And the tug toward the dunes dissipates. Footprints smooth out, leaving no trace of the previous night's activity. Yet the memory of movement, weight, and presence lingers. Leaving visitors with a profound awareness of the desert's rhythm and the strange energy of Dust Devil Stop. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception, a place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by something beyond ordinary perception. A place where the natural world and the mysterious intersect. They leave with a sense of having been touched by dawn. Dust Devil Stop endures as a threshold in the desert, a location where wind, sand, and perception converge. To create fleeting moments of wonder and unease. Every swirl of dust, every shifting shadow, and every whisper carried on the wind reminds travelers that the desert is not empty. It is alive with movement, memory, and subtle presence, inviting those who pause to witness its strange beauty. And to consider the invisible forces that shape the world around them. Silent Mirage Stop emerges from the desert like a vision half-formed between reality and imagination. The building rests on an expanse of sand that stretches endlessly in all directions, its walls bleached by sun and wind. From afar, travelers see the faint shimmer of heat rising from the dunes, and yet the structure appears fixed, unmoving, a solitary presence against the vast emptiness. As visitors approach, the first unsettling sensation is the sand itself. Reflections appear on its surface that do not belong to anyone standing there. A traveler may glance down, expecting to see only their own shadow, yet another silhouette mirrors their movements, sometimes delayed, sometimes ahead, always impossibly real. The effect is subtle at first, almost playful, but soon it grows impossible to ignore. Each step becomes a careful negotiation between what is seen and what is known. Soft laughter drifts through the air, distant and persistent. It echoes endlessly across the dunes, slipping into the ears of travelers from no clear source. The sound is faint, almost melodic, carrying a tone that is neither menacing nor comforting. It creates a tension that lingers, a reminder that the stop exists in a space separate from ordinary experience. Travelers may pause, searching for the source, yet the laughter drifts just out of reach, as if deliberately guiding their attention without revealing itself. Time behaves unpredictably at Silent Mirage Stop. The sun moves slowly across the sky, yet moments seem to stretch and freeze at will. Clocks, if they are present, may stop entirely, their hands frozen in defiance of all expectation. Travelers report a sense of displacement, as though the stop occupies a temporal space that bends and folds upon itself. The interior of the building is as enigmatic as its exterior. Windows reflect the desert outside, yet sometimes reveal fleeting figures or objects that vanish when looked at directly. Doors open to hallways that seem longer or shorter than their exterior dimensions suggest, and the air carries the faint scent of dry sand, old wood, and something indefinably ancient. Every creak of a floorboard, every whisper of wind through cracks in the walls, feels amplified, charged with significance beyond its ordinary sound. Shadows shift across walls in subtle patterns. A chair may appear where none was before. A table slightly misaligned. Or a staircase seeming to descend farther than it physically should. These small distortions are never violent or threatening. But they reinforce the impression that the stop is alive and capable of altering perception. Travelers learn to move cautiously, attuned to every detail, aware that ordinary expectation has little authority here. The desert outside mirrors the strangeness within. Dunes roll endlessly, yet sometimes the landscape appears to shift when observed from different angles. A mirage-like shimmer may appear, suggesting movement or water that vanishes upon approach. Travelers notice that familiar landmarks seem to drift, creating a subtle disorientation that heightens the Stopa's otherworldly presence. The horizon itself can appear closer or further away, making the journey toward or away from the stop feel simultaneously long and fleeting. Evening brings a unique transformation. The fading sun casts long shadows that stretch across the sand like fingers, and the soft laughter becomes more distinct, weaving through the air with a hypnotic rhythm. Reflections on the sand catch the light in strange ways, revealing fleeting images of figures standing just beyond perception. Visitors sometimes feel compelled to follow these glimpses, yet when pursued, they vanish entirely, leaving only the sense that something exists just beyond reach. The stillness of night amplifies every sensation. A light wind carries the scent of dry earth, rustles the edges of fabric or sand, and whispers past ears with a faint timbre of voices. The building itself seems to breathe, a slow, deliberate rhythm that syncs with the observer's own awareness. Travelers feel simultaneously drawn in and cautious, aware that each movement, each glance, is part of an intricate experience shaped by both perception and presence. Despite its eerie qualities, Silent Mirage Stop is not hostile. There is no threat, only the persistent awareness of being in a place where ordinary rules do not fully apply. The reflections, laughter, and temporal distortions create a heightened attentiveness, an immersive engagement that transforms even simple observation into a profound experience. Every detail, from the shifting sand to the faint echoes of presence, contributes to a sense of being part of something larger, something that exists in the overlap between reality and imagination. By dawn, the desert quiets and the stop returns to its muted state. Reflections vanish, laughter retreats, and time resumes its conventional flow. Visitors depart carrying the impression of having entered a space suspended between worlds, where perception, memory, and the passage of time intertwine. The sand and the building retain their mysteries, waiting for the next traveler to arrive and encounter the delicate, persistent echo of the mirage. Silent Mirage Stop endures as a threshold, a place where ordinary perception falters and the extraordinary becomes perceptible. Every visitor leaves with memories of reflections not their own. Laughter that refuses to fade. And moments that stretched beyond the ordinary. A quiet testament to the mysteries that linger just beyond the edges of understanding. Rusted Sign Stop stands alone along a desolate stretch of road where the landscape seems suspended in time. The air is still, yet the old bus stop sign creaks as though moved by an invisible hand. Its faded paint bears the marks of decades, flaking in the sun and rusting along the edges. A silent witness to countless travelers who have passed and perhaps some who never left. The bench beneath the sign seems ordinary at first, worn wood and chipped paint. But a closer look reveals something unsettling. Figures in old uniforms occasionally appear, seated as though waiting for a bus that has long ceased to run. They sit quietly, motionless, blending into the background yet impossible to ignore. Travelers passing by report a strange sense of recognition, a feeling that these figures belong to another time yet remain tethered to the present moment. Sounds at Rusted Sign Stop are strange and inconsistent. A soft whisper carries on the wind, sometimes calling a name. Other times dissolving into silence before it can be fully heard. The creaking of the sign, the distant rumble of forgotten vehicles, and the subtle footsteps that never seem to touch the ground all contribute to an atmosphere that is simultaneously calm and unsettling. Every sound feels charged, as if the place itself holds memory and intention. Travelers who pause here often feel a pull, a quiet compulsion to sit or linger, though nothing visible forces them to do so. The figures on the benches remain impassive, yet their presence is felt deeply. Some visitors have described a sensation of being observed, eyes invisible yet attentive, following movements with a patient curiosity. It is a gaze without malice, yet it is profoundly disquieting. The surrounding landscape adds to the sense of timelessness. Sparse vegetation clings to the edges of the road, wind-blown and sun-bleached. The horizon stretches endlessly, barren and empty, amplifying the feeling of isolation. Sunsets here are vivid, burning the sky with color. But as night falls, the world becomes quieter, almost suspended. Shadows lengthen and twist, and the bench seems to become more than an object of wood and metal. It transforms into a focal point for the strange energies that dwell here. Night at Rusted Sign Stop deepens the mystery. The sign casts long shadows across the dirt and asphalt, creating a sense of dislocation, a merging of observer and observed. A sense of dislocation, a merging of observer and observed. The phenomena extend beyond sight. The wind carries subtle, almost imperceptible sounds that defy explanation. Whispers might mimic speech patterns from decades past, or seem entirely personal, repeating phrases that only the listener would recognize. The sensation is of a place that remembers, that holds fragments of lives and moments that have long since passed. Occasionally, travelers have left offerings, small tokens placed on the bench or at the base of the sign. Coins, trinkets, scraps of paper, and even flowers appear without explanation. Some say the figures respond, nodding subtly or shifting in posture when items are placed, yet when approached, they vanish, leaving the tokens behind. The line between reality and memory blurs here, and the experience feels intensely personal, as though the place communicates only with those who take notice. As though the place communicates only with those who take notice. The bus stop is not bound to a schedule or route. Its purpose seems symbolic, a meeting point between times and lives. Travelers describe a sense of unresolved stories, of moments frozen yet alive, of memories etched into the space that continue to resonate. Each visitor encounters something different, some subtle, some undeniable, yet all leave with the awareness that the place has marked them in some quiet, enduring way. Morning brings a transformation. The sun washes the landscape in warmth, and the figures, if present, fade into the light. The wind dies down, leaving the sign and bench motionless. Yet traces remain, impressions on the mind and heart, fleeting glimpses of a reality that exists beside, or beneath, the ordinary. Travelers who continue their journey carry with them a memory of being watched, of names whispered, and of the persistent, haunting presence of rusted sign stop. Even when empty, the stop maintains its atmosphere. The creaking sign continues with the rhythm of invisible hands. The bench holds the residue of past presences, and the desert road stretches onward. Silent yet full of latent observation. And the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. 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 A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A place where the past persists. A place where time folds in on itself and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Those who leave rarely forget. They speak of the weight of being observed without confrontation. The fleeting figures in uniform, and the whispers that accompany them along the road. Rusted sign stop is more than a location. It is a liminal space, a convergence of the present with echoes of lives long gone. Where travelers are invited to witness, if only for a moment, the quiet persistence of memory in the desert air. Here, time slows. Shadows linger longer than they should. Wind carries the unheard voices of another era. And the sign continues its gentle creak. As if acknowledging the passage of every visitor. And a testament to moments that refuse to be forgotten. And a quiet reminder that some places are alive not with motion, but with memory, observation, and the soft, insistent call of the past. Ghost Canyon Stop lies tucked deep within a winding desert canyon, where the walls rise sharply on either side, their jagged edges catching the fading light of day. The canyon holds a quiet weight, a stillness that is both captivating and unsettling. As if time itself moves differently here. The heat of the desert is intense, but within the canyon, pockets of cold air appear without explanation. These cold spots seem to follow no pattern. Appearing near rocks, in shaded corners, or along the worn trail. Each encounter leaves a lingering sense of unease. As though the canyon breathes quietly, its presence acknowledged only by those attuned to its subtleties. Footsteps echo across the canyon floor, but often, no one else is present. Travelers report seeing figures in the distance, pale shapes moving along the sand or along ledges above. Only for them to disappear when approached. The footprints they leave behind remain, forming a trail that vanishes into the canyon walls or disappears entirely. There is a sense of continuity, of stories repeating themselves silently, embedded in the very landscape of the canyon. The canyon walls themselves are witnesses. Their surfaces reflect the sunlight. And during certain hours, the reflections reveal fleeting images of people who are not present. Some travelers describe catching glimpses of figures in the narrow shadows between rocks, only for those shapes to vanish when the eye focuses. The effect is subtle yet undeniable. A silent reminder that Ghost Canyon Stop exists in a space that bends perception and challenges expectations. Small structures mark the stop, weathered by wind and sand, serving as a resting point for weary travelers. The building is modest, constructed of stone and wood, blending almost seamlessly with its surroundings. Inside, dust motes drift in the sunbeams that filter through the cracked windows. Chairs and tables remain still, yet some report seeing subtle movements, a cup slightly shifted or a chair angled differently than before. It is never overt, but the small anomalies contribute to the pervasive sense that the canyon and the stop are more than just physical spaces. The desert around Ghost Canyon Stop amplifies sound. Every footstep carries, every rustle of sand or whisper of wind is echoed, creating the impression of presence beyond what can be seen. Travelers have recounted hearing soft murmurs that seem to rise from the canyon floor itself. These are fragments of conversation, names spoken in fleeting tones, carrying a hint of urgency that is difficult to ignore. The whispers are never threatening, yet they demand attention, drawing those nearby into a quiet awareness of the canyon's hidden dimensions. As night descends, the canyon transforms. Shadows lengthen and deepen, the walls absorbing the remaining light and radiating a muted darkness. The cold spots grow more pronounced, and the whispers take on a clarity that seems almost deliberate. Travelers report a heightened sense of perception, noticing movements and patterns they would have overlooked in the daylight. The canyon floor is uneven, worn with time and the passage of countless travelers. Footprints appear with no apparent origin, often leading to nowhere or fading abruptly. Some trace these prints, only to find that the shapes they followed no longer exist. There is a haunting consistency to this phenomenon, a rhythm that suggests the canyon has retained traces of past presences, impressions left behind as if to remind visitors that they are not alone, even when they cannot see the other observers. Travelers who linger often describe a dual sensation of awe and caution. The canyon is stunning, its jagged cliffs and sweeping vistas captivating. Yet its subtle supernatural activity creates a tension that is impossible to ignore. Every breeze carries with it the feeling of attention. And every shadow seems to hold a story waiting to be understood. It is a place where natural beauty intertwines seamlessly with inexplicable phenomena, creating an experience that lingers long after departure. The legend of Ghost Canyon Stop endures because of these shared experiences. The cold spots, disappearing figures, whispering voices, and shifting shadows are recalled again and again, building a narrative that feels both tangible and elusive. Those who pass through often speak of the canyon in hushed tones, recounting the ways it bends perception, tests awareness, and evokes a profound respect for the unseen. Even after leaving, the memory remains vivid. The footprints in the sand. The figures that vanish when approached. And the whispers that seem to rise from the desert floor continue to echo in the mind of the traveler. Ghost Canyon Stop is more than a waypoint. It is a place where the desert holds its secrets tightly, revealing only fragments to those who pause long enough to notice. It is a threshold between the known and the unknown. A living story carved into rock, sand, and shadow. Waiting silently for the next traveler to arrive. Twilight Sand Stop lies isolated on a barren stretch of desert, where the horizon melts into colors that seem almost unreal. Sunsets here linger longer than anywhere else, casting amber and violet hues that stretch and deepen as if time itself has slowed. Travelers who pause at the small shelter often find themselves drawn into a strange rhythm, where moments stretch and the world feels suspended between day and night. The shelter is simple and weathered, a wooden structure that offers sparse shade and a quiet place to rest. Yet within its presence, the desert begins to behave in ways that defy expectation. Shadows stretch unusually long, and the grains of sand surrounding the shelter shift in subtle patterns, forming small ridges and impressions that suggest movement even when the air is still. It is as though the landscape itself responds to those who pause and observe. Visitors describe a sensation of time slowing down. A step toward the edge of the shelter can take longer than it should. A conversation seems to stretch across minutes. And even the setting sun seems reluctant to vanish. The effect is not frightening, but disorienting. The whisper of the wind, the shifting of sand, and the warmth of the sun become more pronounced. Whispers echo around the shelter, carrying voices from decades past. They are faint and fragmented, sometimes resembling greetings, fragments of conversation, or distant laughter. Listeners often sense the presence of people who existed long before them, a connection across time that is subtle yet undeniable. The voices seem to emerge from the desert itself, carried on the slow-moving currents of air, and fade before they can be fully comprehended. The interplay between light and shadow at Twilight Sand Stop enhances the sense of otherworldliness. The fading sun paints the sand in deep golds and purples, and the shelter's weathered wood casts intricate patterns across the dunes. Small movements within the sand appear as if responding to the passing light, creating shapes and textures that seem alive. Every element of the sky, the sand, and the whispering air combines to create an experience that is both serene and unnerving. Travelers often note subtle disturbances in the air, moments when a breeze passes over them without apparent source. Grains of sand drift upward in spirals. And for brief instants, figures seem to shimmer at the edge of vision. They are fleeting and indistinct, sometimes resembling travelers from another era or animals moving silently across the dunes. These visions vanish the moment they are focused on, leaving only a sense of presence and the echo of motion. The desert itself feels like a repository of memory. Every ridge of sand, every gust of wind, and every whisper seems to carry fragments of the past. And every impression left in the sand is often smoothed away almost immediately, as if the desert prefers to hold its secrets just out of reach. Travelers sense that they are witnessing not only the physical landscape, but the echoes of those who passed this way long before them. Night deepens slowly at Twilight Sand Stop. The last rays of the sun bleed across the sky, and the desert transforms into a tapestry of silver and shadow. Whispers continue to drift in the air, sometimes rising to faint conversations that fade like echoes in a canyon. The shelter becomes a focal point, a place of stillness in the midst of subtle motion. Shadows lengthen and twist in the moonlight, adding a layer of mystery to the landscape, while the sense of time slowing becomes more pronounced, creating a dreamlike atmosphere. Despite the eerie qualities, the stop is not threatening. It is a place that encourages observation and reflection, where travelers become acutely aware of their surroundings and the subtle interplay between motion and stillness, past and present, and quiet wonder. The desert rewards patience, and those who remain attentive find themselves immersed in a landscape alive with stories, memory, and quiet wonder. The desert rewards patience, and those who remain attentive find themselves immersed in a landscape alive with stories, memory, and quiet wonder. By the early hours of night, the whispers fade, and the dunes settle into stillness. Yet the memory of lingering sunsets, subtle movements, and faint voices remain with travelers. Twilight sand stop leaves an impression that extends beyond the desert. A reminder of a place where time stretches, memory whispers, and the natural world intersects with the mysterious in ways that are impossible to fully explain. Twilight sand stop endures as a threshold between the seen and unseen, the present and the past. Every lingering shadow, every soft whisper, and every ripple in the sand is a testament to the desert's quiet power. It is a stop where time itself seems to bend, inviting travelers to pause, observe, and reflect on the delicate balance between perception, memory, and the unyielding mystery of the desert. Sand Dune Hollow Stop lies hidden among rolling desert hills, a place that seems both familiar and impossibly alien. The sun beats down relentlessly by day, painting the sand in gold and amber tones. Yet as the light wanes, a quiet unease begins to settle over the dunes. Shadows move against the wind, stretching and twisting in ways that defy reason. Travelers who pause to watch notice figures that seem alive yet vanish when approached, leaving only a whisper of displacement in the still air. The moment one steps onto the stop, the sensation of being watched becomes almost tangible. Every glance into the dunes feels answered, as if unseen eyes track every movement. The wind carries the soft rustle of sand and the faint creak of distant boards, but the source remains unseen. Even in the emptiest spaces, a subtle presence seems to linger, attentive and patient. The desert around the stop is silent, yet full of hidden life, a quiet stage for phenomena that challenge perception and expectation. Odd sounds punctuate the emptiness. Some travelers claim to hear bus engines revving in the distance, echoing across the dunes, yet no bus ever arrives. The sound grows closer, then recedes, always remaining just out of reach. Tires seem to roll across invisible tracks, and a faint metallic clatter occasionally punctuates the air. These auditory mirages heighten the sense of unreality, leaving visitors unsure whether to trust their senses or question them entirely. The stop itself is deceptively simple. Weathered signs lean against sand-laden posts, offering directions. A bench stands alone, its paint chipped and faded. And the surrounding sand shifts as if moved by unseen feet. Each detail, from the curl of a wind-blown leaf to the faint impression of a footprint, reinforces the unsettling atmosphere. Time feels altered here, slowing in moments of observation, and accelerating when attention drifts. Shadows behave unpredictably. They detach from their sources, stretching long across the sand or clustering in corners as though observing intruders. When sunlight fades completely, these shadows take on a life of their own, moving independently of wind or motion. Travelers report fleeting glimpses of forms at the edge of vision, silhouettes that appear humanoid yet impossible to define. They shift, vanish, and reappear, heightening a sense of unease that never fully dissipates. The desert air itself carries subtle signs of the stop's peculiar nature. Temperature changes abruptly without warning, a sudden chill running across exposed skin as if brushed by invisible hands. A still breeze may carry whispers of movement, soft murmurs that seem to come from every direction at once. Visitors instinctively turn, searching for a cause, only to find the desert unchanged, silent, and empty, save for the watchful presence that seems embedded in every dune and grain of sand. As night falls, the hollow stop transforms. The moon casts a pale, cold glow over the sands, exaggerating shadows and flattening distances. Shapes that were barely perceptible by day become prominent and disquieting under moonlight. Travelers find that paths previously clear appear shifted or distorted, and footprints vanish seconds after being made. The desert around the stop seems to close in, enveloping the space in a quiet tension that is both alluring and unsettling. Sounds at night take on new dimensions. The rumble of non-existent engines continues, sometimes accompanied by echoes that resemble voices carried on the wind. The repetition of these sounds, rhythmic and unpredictable, creates a sense of anticipation. Visitors find themselves listening intently, unsure whether they are drawn by curiosity or compelled by an unseen force. The hollowed dunes respond in subtle ways, tiny sand drifts forming patterns that suggest movement, as if the desert itself watches and reacts. Inside the stop, if one ventures close, subtle phenomena persist. Faint footprints appear across the sand, only to vanish when examined. Small objects shift or tilt without visible cause. And even the faint glow of moonlight seems uneven, casting shadows that do not match their sources. These details create a tactile sense of the surreal, a careful orchestration of elements that keeps travelers both alert and disoriented. The stop becomes a space of observation, where every sound, shadow, and movement carries heightened significance. By dawn, the desert returns to a deceptive calm. Shadows shrink to their normal forms. And the wind resumes its gentle, predictable course. The hollowed dunes appear unaltered. Yet travelers carry the memory of impossible sights and sounds. Engines heard but never seen. Shadows that moved with a mind of their own. And the persistent sensation of being watched linger in consciousness long after leaving. Each visitor departs with a quiet awareness that the hollow stop exists beyond ordinary comprehension. A space suspended between perception and imagination. Sand dune hollow stop endures as a liminal space, a desert crossroads where reality bends and perception is questioned. Its shifting shadows, elusive sounds, and the subtle awareness of unseen observers create an immersive experience that is both captivating and unnerving. Travelers leave marked by the Stopa's persistent mystery, aware that the desert holds secrets not meant to be fully understood, yet impossible to forget. Forgotten Trail Stop rests in isolation along a road that seems to stretch endlessly into the horizon. The shelter stands weathered and worn, its paint faded and wood splintered, yet it retains a presence that feels oddly deliberate. Travelers who stumble upon it report an immediate sense of being watched, though the source is never seen. The benches inside appear ordinary at first glance, yet closer observation reveals that they are often occupied by spectral passengers. Some travelers hesitate at the threshold, feeling a pull, an invitation to sit, though no words are spoken. The figures do not move, yet their presence is heavy, filling the space with an awareness that is both unnerving and compelling. Time behaves strangely at Forgotten Trail Stop. Minutes stretch into hours, and moments of stillness feel impossibly long. Travelers have recounted the disorienting sensation of stepping inside and suddenly realizing that far more time has passed than they perceive. The sun may shift in the sky, shadows lengthen unnaturally, and the wind carries faint sounds of distant voices, each echo lingering just beyond comprehension. The air within the shelter carries an energy that is palpable. Some feel unseen hands gently guiding them toward the benches, urging them to rest, to pause. Others sense a subtle warmth or a cold touch along their shoulders as they move through the space. The effect is disorienting yet oddly comforting, as though the stop exists to hold visitors in a liminal space between worlds. At dusk, the setting sun casts long shadows across the trail, and the spectral figures seem to take on more distinct shapes. Travelers report glimpses of clothing from decades past, hats and coats from eras long gone, and the sense that the shelter is a waypoint not merely in geography but in time. Sounds are subtle yet impossible to ignore. The rustling of fabric, soft footsteps on wood, and murmurs that cannot be traced to any source fill the air. Some claim to hear faint conversations, fragments of memories from travelers who may have passed through the stop long ago. The whispers carry a cadence that feels intentional, yet their meaning is never fully revealed. The surrounding trail contributes to the isolation and the mystery. The earth is uneven, covered in dust and fallen leaves that crunch underfoot. Every step toward the shelter is accompanied by a heightened awareness, as if the trail itself is alive and responding to movement. Visitors often describe a sensation of reflection, noticing their own forms among the spectral passengers, seated silently on the benches, watching the world pass. The effect is subtle, a fleeting awareness that may disappear when attention is shifted. Some have stepped back to discover that the space appears unchanged, yet the feeling of having witnessed something beyond ordinary perception lingers. Nightfall amplifies the experience. The shelter glows softly in moonlight, the spectral figures more defined in the silvery illumination. Travelers hear the trail sighing in the wind, a sound that blends with the murmurs of unseen presences. Some report that the air seems denser, heavy with expectation, and that each breath carries a hint of the past, as though history itself lingers in the space. Objects and details shift subtly over time. Benches may appear slightly rearranged, small items left behind by previous visitors might vanish or move. The effect is never threatening, but it heightens the sense that forgotten trail stop exists as a place where the ordinary rules of reality are suspended. Travelers feel that the stop remembers, recording each visit in some intangible way. Many leave tokens behind, though their significance is unclear. Small objects, trinkets, or notes are placed on benches or along the trail. Occasionally, travelers discover that these items have been moved or altered, their placement changed as if by hands unseen. The stop responds in quiet ways, communicating without speech, existing as a living repository of memory and experience. When travelers finally depart, the trail resumes its normal appearance, the spectral figures fading with the moonlight. Yet the experience remains, lingering in memory as a place where time is fluid, where presence extends beyond the material, and where the ordinary world intersects with echoes of the past. Forgotten Trail Stop is more than a shelter, it is a threshold, a space where travelers encounter both themselves and the traces of those who came before. The trail stretches on beyond sight, seemingly endless, yet the shelter remains, waiting for the next visitor. Every element, from the creaking benches to the whispers in the air, reinforces the feeling that this place is alive, attentive, and patient. Forgotten Trail Stop endures as a liminal space, a quiet reminder that some paths are more than roads, they are conduits of memory, presence, and unseen guidance that reaches across time. For those who pause and look closely, the stop offers a rare and disquieting clarity. The figures, the whispers, and the altered sense of time reveal that this place exists to observe and to be observed. Forgotten Trail Stop is a testament to the persistent echoes of lives once lived, a sanctuary for memory, and a haunting waypoint along the endless road. Mirage Hollow Stop lies hidden within the heart of a sun-scorched desert, where the heat rises in wavering waves that distort the horizon. Travelers who venture here often speak of seeing roads bend impossibly, as if the desert itself is reshaping under the sun. Every step feels slightly uncertain, as though the ground could shift beneath them without warning. The desert here is both beautiful and disorienting. The sand stretches endlessly, yet small formations emerge suddenly. Clusters of rocks or weathered debris that appear and vanish depending on where one stands. These mirages are fleeting, teasing the senses, and leaving a lingering sense that the desert is aware of those who walk its expanse. Figures appear on the horizon, often far away, walking slowly as if following a path invisible to the ordinary eye. Travelers approach, hoping to see someone or something tangible, only for the figures to vanish suddenly. The experience is unsettling, a reminder that Mirage Hollow Stop exists outside conventional understanding, where perception and reality bend under the relentless desert sun. The stop itself is modest, a collection of weathered structures that blend into the surrounding sand. A small shelter offers shade and a place to rest, though it is empty most of the time. Travelers have noted subtle changes within the structures, items slightly shifted or shadows that seem to move independently of the sun. It is as if the desert and the stop itself are alive, maintaining a silent watch over those who pass through. Puddles that appear briefly after rare desert rains are particularly enigmatic. They reflect not only the sky but fragments of images that do not belong to the present. Sometimes, travelers see figures crouching by the water, peering back at them, only for the reflections to ripple and disappear when approached. The effect is disorienting, making it difficult to trust the eyes fully. The desert seems to whisper, urging those who linger to pay attention to details, yet offering no clear explanation for the phenomena observed. The heat intensifies as the sun reaches its peak, warping distances and creating optical illusions that challenge even the most experienced travelers. Tracks in the sand sometimes appear where no one has walked, and other times, footsteps vanish mid-stride. The desert becomes a stage for imperceptible movements, a place where shadows take on a life of their own and the familiar becomes strange. Every step is measured carefully, as one never knows whether the next sight will be real or a product of the desert's mirage. At dusk, the desert takes on an ethereal quality. The sunlight fades, and the heat waves settle, leaving the landscape bathed in muted colors. Shadows stretch and twist, forming shapes that hint at life beyond the eye's comprehension. Travelers speak of seeing distant fires that vanish before they reach them, and silhouettes that emerge only to disappear into the night. The desert's illusions are at their most vivid, teasing the mind and challenging the senses with each fading light. Those who have stayed overnight describe strange sounds carried by the wind. Soft whispers seem to rise from the sand itself, though no one else is present. Occasionally, a sudden movement in the distance draws attention, a shadow crossing a dune, only for the moment to vanish entirely. The desert communicates in subtle ways, offering fleeting glimpses of a hidden order while leaving the observer unsure of what is real and what is imagined. Mirage Hollow Stop endures in stories because of these shared experiences. Travelers recount the sense of unreality, the mirages, the figures that vanish, and the whispers carried on the wind. The desert becomes a character itself, shaping the experience and leaving lasting impressions that linger long after departure. Every visit adds to the legend, creating a tapestry of encounters that feels both tangible and elusive. Even after leaving, the desert's influence remains. The shimmering heat, impossible reflections, and fleeting figures replay in the mind. A reminder that Mirage Hollow Stop is more than a simple waypoint. It is a place where perception bends, where the ordinary rules of the world seem suspended, and where the desert holds its secrets tightly. Those who venture here come away changed, aware of the desert's quiet power, and the mysteries that lie just beyond sight. Mirage Hollow Stop is a threshold between the known and the unknown. A living illusion that tests the senses and challenges understanding. It invites travelers to observe closely, to question what they see, and to respect the subtle forces that shape the landscape. The desert offers no answers, only experiences, leaving each visitor with a story of fleeting figures, shifting reflections, and the haunting beauty of a place that exists both in reality and in the mind's eye. Dead Manna's Curve Stop sits at the edge of a winding road where the asphalt twists sharply around a cliffside, a place where drivers instinctively slow and the landscape seems to hold its breath. The bus stop is small, worn, and weathered by wind and time, yet it exudes a quiet presence that draws the attention of those who pass by. Travelers often pause here, sensing that something lingers in the air, something unseen yet unmistakable. As night approaches, the atmosphere thickens. Shadows stretch across the pavement and the surrounding terrain, and the air takes on a strange weight, pressing lightly against the skin. Visitors describe an almost imperceptible chill, as if the curve itself remembers every vehicle that has passed and every life it has touched. The road bends sharply, and at that angle, the world seems to distort, the lights of passing cars glinting strangely, casting elongated reflections across the ground. Those who wait at Dead Man's curved stop often report seeing figures appear at the edge of the road. They are passengers from decades past, dressed in clothing that belongs to another era, waiting silently for a bus that will never arrive. Some sit on the bench under the small shelter, their hands resting in laps or gripping invisible bags. Others stand along the roadside, glancing toward the approaching curve as though anticipating an arrival that remains perpetually out of reach. Whispers begin subtly, carried on the wind, faint as though from a distance. They grow louder as night falls, threading through the rustle of leaves and the hum of the road. Words are indecipherable at first, fragments of conversation from forgotten decades, yet they resonate with emotion. Travelers feel the weight of those voices, a connection across time that is both unsettling and mesmerizing. The whispers seem to emanate from every direction, from the asphalt beneath their feet and the shadows that gather at the curve. The curve itself feels alive. Tires that pass too close to the edge produce echoes that linger unnaturally, bouncing off the rock face and back into the night. Lights from vehicles shimmer strangely, and sometimes, travelers glimpse reflections in the darkened windows of cars that appear as ghostly faces looking outward. The desert beyond the road is silent, yet the air hums with the memory of movement, of lives once present and now reduced to shadows and whispers. Figures at the bus stop do not interact directly, yet their presence is tangible. A quiet acknowledgement that they are observed, even as the specters remain distant. Some report seeing a hand lift in greeting, only to dissolve moments later. Footsteps appear in the dust near the shelter, then vanish as if never made. The road, the stop, and the surrounding landscape act as conduits for memory, capturing fragments of lives that continue to echo long after the people themselves have gone. Night deepens, and the whispers reach a subtle crescendo. The wind carries the faint sound of a bus engine, though none ever appears. Shadows twist unnaturally around the shelter, stretching and retracting as if following a rhythm invisible to the living. Travelers may feel the brush of air against their shoulders, the impression of a presence just behind them. And the unmistakable sensation of being part of a story that is larger than themselves. Every element of the curve of the road, the shelter, the desert beyond it creates a liminal space, a threshold between past and present, between life and memory. Despite the unsettling sensations, Dead Man's curve stop is not hostile. It is a place that commands attention, inviting reflection on the fragility of time. The pattern of shadows, the subtle shift of air, the whispers that rise and fall like tides. The stop becomes a place of observation, where the ordinary world meets the extraordinary, and where each visitor is reminded that the past is never truly gone. By the early hours of night, the figures fade, the whispers retreat, and the road returns to its quiet state. Footprints disappear in the dust, the echoes of engines fade, and the curve itself lies in stillness, waiting for the next travelers to arrive. Yet the impression remains, a lingering sense of presence, of time slowed, and of memory captured in the very air and earth of the stop. Dead Man's curved stop endures as a place where the living and the echoes of the past converge. The bend in the road, the silent figures, and the persistent whispers create an experience that is as mysterious as it is compelling. Travelers leave with the awareness that they have witnessed something beyond the ordinary, a threshold where memory lingers and the stories of those who came before are preserved in shadow, whisper, and the quiet curve of the desert road. Whispering Dunes stop lies deep within an endless sea of golden sand. A place where the desert seems alive with memory and sound. By day, the dunes stretch endlessly, sun-warmed and shifting gently under the wind. But as the light fades, the desert transforms, and the soft murmur of voices begins to rise from the sand itself. These are not the sounds of the wind alone. Travelers hear fragments of conversations, indistinct yet strangely familiar. Echoing across the dunes as though the desert remembers every footstep, every passing word. The voices repeat endlessly, phrases looping without beginning or end. They come from no visible source, rising and falling with the undulating sands. Listeners often find themselves drawn to the whispers, stepping carefully across the hot grains, seeking the origin, only to discover nothing but emptiness. The desert seems to hold them in a subtle tension, a space where curiosity and caution intertwine. Every movement feels observed, every sound amplified, yet no living presence is ever seen. Shadows behave unnaturally in this place. At times, shapes seem to slither across the dunes, independent and fleeting. Travelers report glimpses of figures at the edges of vision, ephemeral forms that vanish the moment attention is given. Even familiar shapes become strange, and the desert refuses to remain predictable. The interplay of shadow and sand creates an atmosphere thick with uncertainty and wonder. A liminal space suspended between reality and imagination. The stop itself is minimal, yet its presence is undeniable. A lone bench sits near the crest of a dune, its paint faded and sand smoothed. Each footprint left in the sand seems to vanish within moments, swallowed by the soft, shifting terrain. Small objects, discarded or left behind by travelers, appear slightly moved when looked at again, as if unseen hands have touched them. These subtle disturbances reinforce the desert's enigmatic nature, keeping all who enter alert and uncertain. Sound dominates the experience. The murmuring voices are joined by the occasional clatter of something unseen rolling over the dunes. The distant scrape of sand shifting. Or the faint echo of footsteps that do not match those of any human present. These noises rise and fall unpredictably, creating a rhythm that feels deliberate. As if the desert itself orchestrates the experience. Time becomes mutable in this space, stretching during moments of silence and contracting when the whispers intensify. Travelers lose track of hours, often realizing only later how long they have lingered among the dunes. As if the desert itself orchestrates the experience. Time becomes mutable in this space, stretching during moments of silence and contracting when the whispers intensify. As night falls, the whispering dune stop transforms further. Moonlight washes the sands in silver, casting long, shifting shadows that seem to move independently. The whispers become clearer, carrying fragments of stories and conversations from the past. Names are called, questions posed, and laughter echoes softly, yet always just beyond comprehension. The desert feels inhabited, not by visible beings, but by the residue of countless journeys and voices long forgotten. Travelers experience a strange blend of unease and fascination, compelled to observe yet cautious of venturing too far. The air itself seems alive. Temperature shifts subtly and unpredictably. A cool draft brushing along exposed skin as if invisible entities move nearby. Even in the stillest moments. The desert conveys presence, as though the sands themselves are attentive. These sensations reinforce the feeling that every visitor is being silently watched, not with malice, but with patient observation. Every dune, every shadow, every whisper is part of a living memory, a tapestry woven from the countless travelers who have passed through this place over time. Footprints, shadows, and echoes all conspire to create a sense of timelessness. Travelers may glance at a dune, only to find it reshaped when looked at again. A single voice can repeat a phrase dozens of times, carrying weight as though it holds significance the listener cannot grasp. Each detail, from the smallest drifting grain to the distant undulation of sand, is infused with an uncanny vitality. The desert refuses to be static, constantly shifting and presenting subtle signs that it is aware of those who traverse it. Despite its disquieting qualities, Whispering Dunes Stop captivates the imagination. The voices, the shadows, and the soft movements of sand invite contemplation. Visitors find themselves reflecting on the impermanence of time and the persistence of memory. Each sensation, each sound, and each fleeting image contributes to an experience that is both immersive and ephemeral, leaving a lasting impression long after the desert is left behind. By dawn, the desert returns to an apparent calm. The voices fade, shadows contract, and the sand settles into familiar patterns. Travelers, however, carry the memory of a place where the ordinary rules of reality seem suspended. Footsteps may have vanished, conversations may have looped endlessly, and shadows may have moved independently, but the sensation of the desert's attentiveness lingers. Whispering Dunes Stop exists as a threshold, a space where the past converses with the present, where reality bends, and where every visitor becomes part of its enduring story. The dunes, ever shifting, continue their quiet vigil, holding echoes of countless travelers. Each visit becomes another thread woven into the fabric of the desert's memory. The soft whispers, the looping voices, and the moving shadows ensure that Whispering Dunes Stop remains a place of mystery, fascination, and quiet reverence for those who journey through its sands. Black Rock Stop sits isolated along a desolate stretch of road where the land rises into jagged cliffs and scattered boulders. The shelter is modest, weathered by wind and sun, yet its presence feels intentional, almost as if the rocks themselves have conspired to shape it. Travelers who arrive often notice a subtle unease, a feeling that the landscape is observing them. The rocks around the stop are not ordinary. From a distance, they seem fixed and solid. But those who linger report that when they look away, the formations shift imperceptibly. A boulder that was to the left might appear to have moved slightly. A smaller stone disappears only to reappear in a different position. The effect is subtle yet persistent, creating a sense that the environment itself is alive and watching. Temperature changes are sudden and striking. The heat of the day evaporates, replaced by a cold that seems to seep into the bones. Even in the midday sun, shadows stretch unnaturally. A chill carries across the sand and rock. Some describe the cold as moving in waves, enveloping them briefly before retreating. As if the space itself is breathing. Figures appear at the edge of vision, indistinct and fleeting. Travelers catch glimpses of shapes moving between the rocks, or standing just beyond the shelter, watching silently. When approached, the figures vanish without a trace, leaving only the faint impression that they were ever present. Their forms are human-like, yet distorted by distance and shadow, giving them an almost dreamlike quality. The shelter itself seems to respond to those who enter. A bench may feel slightly warm or cold to the touch. And travelers report an occasional sensation of being guided to a particular spot. The wind carries subtle sounds that cannot be traced. Soft footsteps on rock. The distant scraping of stone. Or the whisper of a voice too faint to understand. These phenomena are never aggressive. But they create a heightened awareness that lingers long after leaving. The surrounding landscape adds to the isolation. The ground is uneven, covered in small stones that crunch underfoot. Every movement seems amplified, every sound echoed back in a way that magnifies the sense of emptiness. Travelers feel that each step carries significance, as if the land itself responds to presence. At dusk, the environment transforms. Shadows stretch across the rocks, creating forms that appear almost animated. The shelter glows faintly in the fading light, though no source of illumination is present. Figures that were fleeting in the daylight become more pronounced, standing just beyond sight or moving among the boulders. The cold deepens, carrying with it the subtle scent of earth and stone. And the whispers in the wind grow more distinct, though their meaning remains elusive. Some travelers have reported seeing reflections in the polished surfaces of rocks that do not match their own movements. A hand may appear to wave, a face briefly seen, or a figure that seems to linger in the reflection even after they turn away. These visions are fleeting and unpredictable, leaving those who witness them questioning whether they saw something real or imagined. Time behaves strangely at Black Rock Stop. Minutes can stretch into hours, and moments of stillness feel weighty and deliberate. Travelers often lose track of the sun's position or the shifting shadows, creating a sensation of being caught between past and present. The stop exists in a liminal space, where ordinary measurements of time and distance are suspended. And awareness itself becomes a heightened experience. Small details shift with each visit. Stones may rearrange themselves subtly, benches feel altered, and faint markings appear and disappear along the shelter's walls. These changes are never threatening, but they reinforce the idea that Black Rock Stop is more than a physical location. It is a place where the natural world interacts with the unseen, a threshold between the familiar and the unknown. The experience leaves a lingering impression on those who pass through. Travelers speak of the profound stillness, the subtle movement of rocks, and the occasional glimpse of figures that vanish before comprehension. Where observation alone cannot fully reveal the truth. And where each presence is recorded in ways that remain hidden. When leaving, travelers often turn back to see the shelter and rocks as they were before, unchanged yet somehow different. The phenomena fade with distance, but the memory persists of the sudden cold, the whispering wind, the shifting rocks, and the fleeting figures at the edge of vision. Black Rock Stop endures as a place of quiet mystery, a waypoint that exists between the seen and the unseen, waiting patiently for the next traveler to arrive and encounter the subtle yet undeniable presence that defines it. For those who pause and pay attention, the stop offers an unforgettable experience. It is a place where the natural and supernatural intersect. Where the landscape itself participates in the story. And where each visitor becomes part of an ongoing sequence of presence and observation. Black Rock Stop is a silent sentinel. A living threshold. And a reminder that some places are meant to be felt as much as they are seen. Mirage River Stop lies at the edge of a desert expanse. Where the ground is cracked and dry, yet seems to breathe with an unseen rhythm. The riverbed nearby is parched, a long stretch of sand and stone. That should hold no life, yet travelers speak of ripples that shimmer across its surface. As though water still runs beneath the surface. The effect is subtle at first, faint movements that vanish when approached. Leaving only the sensation that the river remembers its former life. As the sun climbs, the heat rises in waves that distort the horizon. Travelers report hearing splashes, faint and rhythmic, as if someone were wading through the river just out of sight. The sounds are precise, echoing off the nearby cliffs and drifting across the sand, yet when they search for the source, there is nothing. Occasionally, a whisper accompanies the noise, fragments of words spoken long ago, carried as if by the wind but tinged with a haunting clarity that makes the desert feel alive with memory. Figures sometimes appear along the riverbed, silhouettes that move deliberately as if crossing invisible water. They are distant at first, mere outlines against the heat shimmer, yet their presence is unmistakable. The figures step lightly, their feet never touching the dry sand. And just as quickly as they appear, they vanish. Leaving behind only the echo of movement and the lingering sense of something witnessed beyond understanding. The stop itself is small and unassuming, a cluster of weathered structures offering shade and minimal shelter. Tables sit under the open sky, worn smooth by the sun and wind. Visitors often note that objects seem slightly displaced when they return from the riverbed. Chairs are moved, personal items subtly shifted, and shadows appear in corners where none should exist. It is as if the desert and the river are watching, observing each traveler with patient curiosity. At twilight, the Mirage River Stop takes on a different character. Ripples appear more distinct now, catching the dying light in fleeting patterns. Travelers report hearing more persistent splashes and whispers. Voices overlapping and layering, as if multiple moments in time are converging. Some say they can make out the shapes of people from decades past, crossing the river in a slow, almost ceremonial pace. The phenomenon is not limited to sight and sound. The air near the river carries a sudden chill, a contrast to the surrounding desert heat. Travelers feel a weight, a subtle pull that seems to draw them closer to the riverbed. Some hesitate, sensing that the figures are aware of their presence, watching and waiting. The desert here does not threaten with heat or wildlife, but with its capacity to distort perception and awaken a deep, unsettling awareness that the landscape is more than mere sand and rock. Night brings its own revelations. The riverbed becomes a mirror of the sky, the stars reflecting faintly in the shimmering illusions of water. Ripples continue, responding to unseen currents. And the whispers grow softer, intimate, as though sharing stories meant for attentive ears alone. Travelers who linger describe fleeting shapes crossing the river under starlight. Shadows moving silently and then disappearing entirely. Footsteps echo, though the ground is empty. And the sensation of being observed never fades. Stories from those who have visited the stop accumulate over time. Each traveler contributes their experience to the growing legend, recounting the strange ripples, the ghostly figures, and the whispers that speak of events long past. Some speak of sudden feelings of loss, as if part of the desert's memory brushes against them. Others describe a serene fascination, drawn to the river and its illusions, compelled to watch despite the unease it evokes. The Mirage River stop becomes a place where history and imagination meet, a liminal space between reality and memory. Even after leaving, the desert's impression lingers. Travelers carry the sounds and shapes in their minds. The feeling that the dry riverbed has secrets it will not reveal fully. Ripples and whispers replay in memory, a quiet echo that blurs the line between what was seen and what was imagined. The stop endures as a mysterious waypoint, a place that asks more questions than it answers. Where each visit deepens the sense of wonder and disquiet. The desert's haunting presence lingers, a reminder of the secrets that lie just beyond the edge of perception. Mirage River Stop is a threshold to the unknown. Where the desert holds its past like water beneath sand. Revealing itself only in fleeting moments. Challenges travelers to observe, to question, and to respect. The subtle forces at play in this remote landscape. The riverbed may be dry, yet it flows with stories, figures, and whispers. Carrying the memories of those who came before. And leaving each visitor with the undeniable sense that the desert remembers. The desert remembers. Ghost Ridge Stop perches on the edge of a high ridge. Where the land drops sharply into the valley below. From a distance, the ridge seems ordinary, a simple stretch of earth and stone against the sky, yet travelers quickly realize there is something unusual about this place. As the sun sets, long shadows stretch across the landscape, twisting and shifting in ways that suggest movement even when the air is still. Visitors often arrive just as the sky darkens, feeling a sudden stillness that seems to press against the senses. The ridge casts shadows that creep along the ground, curling over rocks and brush like living tendrils. The air carries a subtle hum, a vibration almost imperceptible, yet enough to suggest presence. Footsteps, light and measured, can be heard pacing along the ridge at night. They echo across the valley, though no one is visible, and no source can be found. Some travelers report clocks stopping entirely when they reach the stop. Watches and wall clocks alike pause, their hands frozen mid-tick. Time itself feels distorted, slipping in and out of perception. Visitors describe a sensation of lingering outside of time, where seconds stretch and compress without pattern. The ridge seems to exist both within the ordinary world and just beyond it, a threshold where reality feels malleable and memory becomes layered over the present. The ridge is often shrouded in mist, rising from the valleys below and curling around the rocks and trees. Within this fog, shadows grow deeper and more complex. Shapes appear at the edges of vision, glimpses of figures who vanish the instant they are acknowledged. Travelers sense being watched, a quiet awareness that follows them as they move along the platform of the stop or peer down the slope into the darkness. The ridge feels alive with intent, as though it remembers every step taken upon it and every life that has passed through. At night, the wind carries whispers, subtle and almost inaudible at first. Words cannot be distinguished, yet they are unmistakably human, fragments of conversation from some distant past. Travelers pause, straining to understand, but the sounds dissolve before meaning can take shape. The ridge seems to be speaking in a language of memory, sharing echoes of moments long gone. Some say the whispers are warnings, others believe they are remnants of those who have lingered, unable to leave the ridge behind. The ridge's eerie influence extends to the shelter at the stop. The small structure is simple, weathered by years of wind and exposure. Yet inside, travelers feel a palpable shift. Objects placed on benches or counters seem to settle differently, tilting or sliding as if guided by unseen hands. Shadows pool in corners, dark and motionless, yet seem to shift imperceptibly when unobserved. The combination of sound, shadow, and stillness creates an atmosphere thick with anticipation. A quiet tension that holds the visitor in place. Footsteps grow louder and more distinct as night deepens, yet when one turns to look, the ridge appears empty. The feeling of presence intensifies, as if multiple entities are pacing in different directions simultaneously. Travelers describe a sensation of being accompanied without being touched, of being part of a rhythm dictated by forces unseen. Each step taken along the ridge echoes beyond the physical, merging with the past and present in ways that feel both natural and impossible. Time seems to suspend entirely at Ghost Ridge Stop. Travelers linger longer than intended, compelled by curiosity and an unspoken understanding that leaving too soon may break the spell. Clocks, watches, and devices fail to measure the experience accurately. Minutes and hours blur together, replaced by perception alone. The ridge etches itself into memory. A place where ordinary rules no longer fully apply, yet where the world remains familiar enough to be recognizable. As dawn approaches, shadows retract and the whispers fade. Footsteps vanish, leaving the ridge once again empty, still, and quiet. Travelers leave with a heightened awareness of their surroundings, of the strange fluidity of time. Of the strange fluidity of time, and of the persistent presence that remains even when unseen. Ghost Ridge Stop endures as a place suspended between reality and memory, a site where shadows hold secrets. Time falters, and the living brush against the echoes of those who came before. The ridge remains as it has for decades, a sentinel of earth and memory, its shadows deep, its whispers persistent, and its stillness deceptive. Those who pass through find themselves changed, aware that the ordinary world is only one layer of existence, and that places like Ghost Ridge Stop offer a glimpse into something enduring, mysterious, and quietly alive. Shimmering sands, where golden dunes stretch endlessly under the sun. By day, the sands appear tranquil and unbroken. A serene landscape that seems untouched by time. Travelers passing through may feel an unusual stillness, as if the desert itself is aware of those who wander across it. And the air carries a subtle tension. As night falls, the sands begin to transform. Moonlight casts a silver glow across the dunes, and the desert takes on a spectral quality. Travelers report the first signs of strangeness as shadows stretch and twist unnaturally across the sand. Shapes appear, ghostly and fleeting, reflecting on the surface like water in a pool. They vanish when approached, leaving only the glimmer of their presence behind. The desert seems alive with a memory of things unseen, an echo of moments long past. Whispers rise from the sands as midnight approaches. They are faint at first, indistinct murmurs that seem carried on the wind, but gradually they grow louder. Travelers often feel a compelling need to follow these voices, drawn to their source, only to discover emptiness. The whispers loop endlessly, repeating fragments of conversations, questions, or names, but the meaning remains elusive. Each sound seems layered, as though countless voices from different times speak together, creating a symphony of the unseen. Creating a symphony of the unseen. Figures appear on the dunes, standing silently against the horizon. They are often glimpsed at the edge of vision, and just as suddenly they vanish when directly observed. Some travelers describe them as human-shaped, others more abstract, their forms shifting and shimmering like heat on the sand. These apparitions leave no footprints, cast no shadows, yet their presence is undeniably felt. Every movement across the sand is carefully observed by unseen eyes, and every sensation is heightened by the desert's uncanny stillness. The air carries subtle changes as the night deepens. A faint chill brushes against the skin, though the desert is normally warm at this hour. Occasional gusts of wind stir the sands, lifting grains that shimmer like silver dust. Sounds are distorted, echoed across distant dunes, and footsteps that should be audible are muffled, swallowed by the desert. The combination of reflection, movement, and whispering creates an atmosphere of perpetual tension, drawing travelers deeper into the mystery of the shimmering sand stop. Time itself seems altered in this place. Moments stretch, and minutes feel like hours. Travelers often lose awareness of their progress, wandering across dunes that seem to shift imperceptibly. Familiar landmarks appear and disappear, creating a sense of disorientation. Even the horizon can betray the senses, bending light in strange ways so that distance and direction become uncertain. The desert refuses to be mapped or measured, existing as a liminal space outside ordinary perception. Footprints appear and vanish in the sand, often of no discernible origin. Travelers may glance back to find impressions that match no one in the group, small signs of life that are both tantalizing and unsettling. Shadows move independently, gliding across dunes without source or consistency. At times, the sand itself seems to ripple with the passage of something unseen, creating patterns that hint at movement just beyond comprehension. These subtle disturbances reinforce the desert's otherworldly nature, keeping all who enter alert and uncertain. As the night reaches its deepest hour, the whispers and apparitions become more intense. Travelers often report hearing their own names called softly, carried from distant dunes. Shapes materialize at impossible distances, only to vanish before they can be reached. The desert feels conscious, a vast presence that observes and responds to the smallest actions. Curiosity and caution coexist, compelling exploration yet warning against reckless wandering. Every sense is heightened, and every shadow, every whisper, every ripple of sand becomes significant. Despite the unease, shimmering sand stop captivates. Its beauty and mystery draw travelers into a landscape that is alive with stories and echoes. Each step taken, each whisper heard, adds to the experience, creating a personal journey that blends memory and imagination. The desert is a keeper of secrets, holding fragments of countless lives that have passed through its endless sands. It offers no answers, only the experience of presence, observation, and the fragile intersection of reality and the unseen. By dawn, the desert returns to apparent calm. Shadows collapse, whispers fade, and the shimmering shapes retreat beneath the morning light. Travelers emerge from the dunes changed, carrying the memory of a night in which the ordinary rules of reality seem suspended. The experience lingers, a quiet hum at the edge of consciousness, a reminder of a place where the sands reflect more than light, where time bends, and where unseen eyes follow every step. Between the seen and the unseen. Create a desert alive with presence and memory. Thread woven into the fabric of the sand, and every traveler. Where reality and mystery coexist in a fragile, luminous balance. Frozen time stop lies at the edge of a barren desert where the horizon melts into shimmering heat and shifting sands. The stop is a solitary structure, weathered and worn, yet it exudes an unmistakable presence. Travelers who approach often notice a sudden stillness in the air, a weight that seems to hold each moment in suspension. The wind is faint, the sun appears unmoving, and a strange calm settles over the landscape, as if time itself has taken pause. The stop is a solitary structure, weathered and worn, yet it exudes an unmistakable presence. The wind is faint, the sun appears unmoving, and a strange calm settles over the landscape, as if time itself has taken pause. Those who wait here quickly realize that ordinary rules no longer apply. The seconds stretch, elongated and distorted. A traveler might sit for what feels like an hour, only to look up and see the sky altered as if weeks have passed. Shadows fail to move, footsteps echo strangely. And the desert itself seems to absorb every motion, while allowing the whispers of the past to linger. These whispers are never threatening, yet they carry an undeniable weight, a presence that communicates without words. Figures appear unpredictably, gliding across the sands or emerging from the shadows of the stop. They are fleeting, ephemeral, and often vanish the moment one turns to face them. Some resemble travelers from a different time, their clothing and expressions unfamiliar yet familiar. Others seem distorted by the heat haze, half-seen forms that flicker like the edges of a memory. Attempting to approach these figures is futile, for they dissolve into the air, leaving only a faint sense that they were ever present. The environment itself seems alive with subtle movements. The sand shifts imperceptibly underfoot, rocks that once rested firmly appear to tilt or slide when unobserved. And the horizon bends with an almost impossible curvature. These changes are not violent or abrupt, but they reinforce the disorienting sense that the desert is aware, observing, and responsive to those who linger. Sounds behave strangely at frozen time stop. A footstep may echo endlessly. A voice may carry across the sands only to return altered, faint, and unfamiliar. Travelers report hearing whispers that call their names, or conversations that seem to unfold from nowhere. Even silence has weight here, as if the absence of sound holds meaning. The desert swallows the noise of the world, yet the whispers remain, persistent and insistent, echoing across the suspended moments. Visitors often describe a disconnection from ordinary time. A meal left uneaten cools and remains as it was. A cup of water does not evaporate. And the sun's movement appears arrested. Those who leave and return find that the stop itself has changed subtly. The placement of stones, the tilt of the benches, or the direction of footprints that do not belong to them. Each detail contributes to the feeling that the stop exists both in this world and slightly outside it. A threshold where reality bends and stretches. At night, the desert reveals even stranger phenomena. The stars above seem frozen, yet they shimmer and pulse in a rhythm that is unmeasurable. Shadows lengthen and distort in ways that defy logic, and the whispers grow more pronounced, carrying hints of voices from travelers long gone. Whispers grow more pronounced, carrying hints of voices from travelers long gone. Figures move along the horizon, sometimes in groups, sometimes alone. Figures move along the horizon, sometimes in groups, sometimes alone. Travelers describe the sensation of being observed without being threatened. Travelers describe the sensation of being observed without being threatened. A sense that time itself has chosen to make them witnesses to an unending tableau. The experience leaves a profound impression. Travelers often feel both small and significant, part of a vast, timeless expanse that stretches endlessly in every direction. There is a beauty to the stillness, an eerie majesty to the desert, and a humbling awareness of forces beyond comprehension. Frozen time stop is not merely a location but a liminal space, a moment suspended where the rules of the world are rewritten and perception becomes as fluid as the sands themselves. Some visitors attempt to measure their time with watches or phones, only to find the devices fail. Clocks stop, batteries drain inexplicably, and electronic devices lose all sense of continuity. Travelers come and leave, yet the stop endures, unchanged and yet transformed by each passing presence. The desert surrounding the stop is unforgiving and vast. Heat, wind, and sand dominate during the day, while nighttime brings a chilling cold that cuts through clothing and skin. Yet these physical extremes are overshadowed by the supernatural phenomena that define the stop. The interplay of light, shadow, time, and presence creates an experience that lingers in memory long after the traveler has departed. Frozen time stop challenges understanding. It is a place where waiting is an adventure, where observation becomes exploration, and where the desert itself conveys a quiet, enigmatic wisdom. Travelers who pass through carry with them the echoes of the stupa, the whispers, the vanishing figures, the suspended time, and the sense that they have been both participants and spectators in a space untouched by ordinary reality. To arrive at frozen time stop is to confront the limits of perception. It is a reminder that the world contains places that exist beyond measurement, where every moment can stretch to eternity, and where the unseen is as real as the tangible. For those who linger, it is a haunting, mesmerizing, and unforgettable encounter. A final stop in a landscape defined by the uncanny and the eternal. Thank you for journeying with me through the haunted desert bus stops of Nevada. The desert is vast, silent, and unforgiving, yet at these stops, time is not the same, and shadows never truly disappear. Travelers come and go, but some are never seen again. If you ever find yourself alone at a desert bus stop, and the air feels heavy, the wind whispers, or time slows unnaturally, remember these tales. Would you wait for the bus, or would you leave before the desert claims you? Rest well, my friend, until our next story.